Welcome back to Nonsense. I'm Chris, and this is a full Season 8 breakdown of Rick and Morty, and we're going to start with the Rick and Morty Season 8 premiere, Summer of All Fears. We open in a Matrix world created by Rick with a constant messaging about not using his phone charger. And for starters, there's obviously just a ton of charger-based stuff in the Matrix Rick made. I won't point out the obvious ones, but the more hidden ones are this building over here and the HDMI ports here. Summer and Morty have been in for a few hours, but nearly 2 decades in Matrix time, and Summer has built a company that made phone chargers obsolete through wireless charging in order to make the Matrix glitch out and shut down. In her office, there are 3 magazine covers she's in, and this other building over here looks like a charger, and the bottle on her bar set also, and even Summer's necklace is a charger, just to start. There's also a ton of buildings that are charger-shaped and power logos everywhere, so I'm not going to point those out anymore unless they're unique. In her hidden compartment, she's got drawings of the house and Beth and Jerry and some kind of blueprint. She meets up with Morty because it's time to execute her plan. And at Morty's house, there's this funny moment where her high heel gets stuck in the mud. We only get a quick shot of Morty's house before it transitions inside, but we can see he's been chopping wood and pulling cars apart. Obviously a hint at his mechanical leanings later on. We see pictures of his comrades from throughout the years and the dog tags he got off CJ from later on. But something interesting is that everything is clearly handmade from the house to the furniture. He wanted to create a life away from the charger bullshit, so he literally built a house and furniture and started a little family with his dogs, just accepting that Rick would get them out, since by now he's played through Roy how many times and just lived a bunch of lifetimes. So another couple decades to him isn't worth the effort to escape on his own anymore, as opposed to Summer, who literally surrounded herself with charger culture in an attempt to get out on her own. But like we learn at the end, Morty wasn't actually just waiting, he was planning too, and by all accounts his plan did work. Summer starts her new power system in order to break the Matrix, and we get some world shots. There's nothing super special about this machine, a couple of funny signs here, God created outlets, and charge belongs in the wall. They wake up and the monitors are just flashing the message, don't take Grandpa's phone charger. And Summer planned it to wake up when Beth was in the kitchen for her nightly wine, and immediately upon waking up screams and convinces Beth not to let Rick wipe their memories. And once Beth had joined, Summer says,
"Put that mind blower gun down."
Obviously referencing the origins of the gun in Morty's Mind Blower episodes. Summer plans to own her new teen life since she's nearly 40 mentally now, but instead breaks down immediately and just becomes super judgy towards Beth for no reason, even though she's being supportive. Morty, on the other hand, continues his plan of getting Rick to help him build a tank. And while he works on it, Rick tosses him a beer, and it exploding on the ground ignites Morty's first PTSD flashback. We see lots more charger-related items, details, from the speaker to the cop uniform, even the businesses are charger-themed. This woman's wearing a bikini of chargers, and this sign is funny, sock it to me. The jail suits say USB-C. Job application is literally just a bunch of questions about taking phone chargers. Anyways, Beth has to charge her phone and Rick tells her to use his charger, setting off Morty's second PTSD flashback. He's got a charger in his helmet, clearly designed to look like cigarettes, which I love the design of. This guy's helmet says, "Born to Charge." During the compilation, we also see Morty choke a guy out with a charger and throw a grenade through an outlet shape. Once he's back, he does his best to put Rick at ease, calls him
smart man,
tells him about a new device, only after having proven himself to know some engineering throughout the episode. And I gotta say, this disillusioned Morty speaks with a calm, numb tone of voice, a lot like evil Morty. I'd argue the line reads are a lot more similar than regular Morty's voice, and I think that was a decision. After Morty's second PTSD episode, though, Beth winds up trying to wipe Summer, who runs away, and then Morty manages to knock Rick out. I gotta say, this moment got the biggest laugh out of me in the entire episode.
No!
Something the matter, sir? You wouldn't be putting people in matrices, would you?
What?
Because that's something you should never do.
Ah! Seriously, Morty? Who's Morty? Is that someone you put in a matrix?
Morty gives him a nice forehead kiss though, and it's especially hilarious that Rick calls Morty uncreative for doing the exact same thing he did, which is funny on its own since he's copying the Matrix itself, meaning his idea wasn't any more original. He also escapes the exact same way Summer escaped, by creating a directly opposing paradox to the Matrix's core lesson, in the form of an exact copy of the actual Matrix's real Earth, shorting it out. So it's kind of doubly funny, even though, of course, there's nothing wrong with him doing the same thing Summer did. It's also hilarious to me that they go out of their way to show that when Morty escapes, this guy survived the car wreck. I mean, how many deaths is Morty responsible for at this point? I don't think one more would matter. Like Rick said,
you're still the same old Morty. Your character's totally protected.
It feels good.
and I'm pretty sure that applies at the end of every episode, right? Anyways, Morty goes to the most important made-up power plant in the US with the goal of shutting down all charging, and Summer stops it. And when a scientist says,
This is exactly why you shouldn't steal your grandpa's invention!
they assume they're in another Matrix and start beating the ever-loving shit out of him. Morty even calls him an NPC, which is hilarious. But it's especially funny because it's a continuation of the simulation-based PTSD gag the show has been doing for a while.
I'm back.
Don't! Or I won't know if I'm out!
All right, Rick.
You little son of a
What are you
bitch!
doing, Rick?
Are you a simulation? Huh? Are you a simulation?
No!
Rick shows up when a nuclear meltdown is about to happen and stops the kids from beating up the scientist and averts the meltdown, getting enough radiation to instantly cause lesions and hair loss, but literally just wiping it away afterward, which was an awesome effect. Summer and Morty decide to wipe their own memories and be normal teens again. But first Morty gets a charger tattoo, only to regret it afterwards, and Summer records a genuinely wise video for herself, only to ignore it once she's mind wiped. Finally, we get the most emotionally resonant moment in the episode, a lot more so than the PTSD flashbacks, which weren't really designed to be emotional, just kind of brutal and funny when juxtaposed against a silly Charger theme. But the advice Summer tries to give herself here, to just love and accept yourself, and not let the world and the people around you take away your empathy, it's honestly good advice for any age. We judge ourselves so harshly throughout our lives. Learning to accept yourself may sound cliche, but it's something most people struggle to do until way too late in life. And after having climbed the Charger-based corporate ladder, Summer is speaking from some amount of experience, saying that as you progress in life, you will be put in more and more situations where you're basically asked not to care about people or the things going on in their lives. Whether it's a sales job that asks you to sell things to people you know can't afford it, or firing someone you know who's doing their best just because they're 10% less productive than average, or just generally putting the interests of the company you work for ahead of a basic human decency. I've been put in all those situations, and all of you probably will be too if you haven't already. The easiest way to get ahead in life is to not look at those people like people. And a lot of people think that's okay, or argue that you have to be realistic. It's either they succeed or you do. But I personally align more with what Summer was trying to say here. And all of this is so funny, because she closes the video like 5 seconds into what is probably a very long video and says,
Yo, Trisha, what are we huffing tonight, bitch?
and that's all for this breakdown.
Pretty cool to see you working with your daughter. Pretty hot.
Okay.
Please don't my coworkers.
Hey, you called me.
This is a breakdown of Rick and Morty, Season 8, Episode 2, Valkyrie. We open on a galactic defiance base deep under an alien sea as they debate the final topic of their meeting, the assassination of the Gromflamite Queen. And down here, we can already see Bug Ann in her first appearance this season before she takes the stage for the finale. There's also a cool-looking three-eyed alligator over here. The leader hands the meeting over to Garcica, a woman droid who is a clear reference to L337 from Star Wars.
How would that work?
That works.
And she accuses the assassination committee, which includes a member of the Squanchy species, of failing to come up with a viable plan, and asks for input from the would-be assassin, Spacebeth. They look around. We see that there's even a Gromflamite who's joined the cause and also grown out an awesome head of red hair. But Spacebeth is nowhere to be found, because she's imitating the Dark Knight's awesome flight scene. Even though this is happening in space, so what would her wings be gliding on? And before you say solar sails, no, that's not enough. Like a solar sail that small would not be able to move her amount of mass. Just absolutely not. But anyways, the assassination committee calls her and she tells them she's just doing it because she's done waiting on them, and hangs up before turning invisible to take out the Queen's guards, phase shifting through the door only to catch a bumblebug having beaten her to the assassination. More guards storm in and she runs to her ship only to watch it get blown up. So she calls the committee for an extract and they get right on it, saying,
"I'll have to call an emergency meeting.
I'm going to die.
So she finds a place to hide and pulls her phone out. In her contacts, we see Beth number 2, Bug Ann, Casali, who I don't recognize, Corsica, the droid from earlier, Rick, obviously, Doug Lug, her neighbor, and finally Dr. Wong, which is a bit of a surprise, honestly. Anyway, she calls Rick after the theme song, and we cut to Rick eating at the sushi place in the sub-basement, which you'll remember from Season 6, Episode 10.
We live over a cool sushi spot?
Domo, still doing the eel roll?
And he's talking to the chef when he gets the call from Beth, parentheses, Space One, in this weird yellow outfit I don't think we've ever seen her wear before, and has left me kind of curious. But he answers the call, saying,
I'm hammering sushi, what's up?
And Beth explains while getting stitched up by a little droid, which I don't believe is a reference to anything, but it's pretty cool. Rick agrees to help after first ordering a
Lava cake to go.
which makes me think of this scene from episode 9 of this season.
What's the story with dessert? Can I just ask for lava cake, or do I have to think it at them?
While Rick waits for his lava cake, Beth takes out some guards before running into him coming through a portal with his lava cake. She asks him to portal her outside the base, but he instead portals them directly into the meeting and immediately notices Bug Ann.
Oh, hey, Bagan.
Hey, Rick.
The leader says the Queen was alive, and Beth deduces they must be faking it somehow since she was definitely dead. The committee complains about Beth, and Rick defends her, but gets her fired by being a little too aggressive on her behalf. Obviously Beth is upset, so she says,
Whatever, drop me off in space.
which is funny because
There's literally everything in space, Morty. Now get the fuck back in the car.
Rick convinces her to let him help figure out what's going on with the Queen and decides to take them to
The filth-encrusted apartment of an insect supremacist arms dealer.
So they park on the roof, and Rick says my personal favorite joke of the episode.
I gotta make sure it's the right supremacist. They all look alike.
And you can see he's watching the days and nights of Mrs. Pancakes here.
You don't know me.
Nice, Mrs. Pancakes.
He jumps out the window to escape, but they catch him, and kind of reference Batman Begins with this interrogation.
Swear to me!
The second Dark Knight trilogy reference so far, although this is also just kind of a comic book trope at this point.
All right, here, I'll show you. There, see? Now he'll tell me everything.
You're gonna catch him, right?
In a second.
But anyways, they finally get him to admit the Queen's assassination was planned by the
Former royal doctor! That's all I knew, I swear!
Is it?
Oh, God.
Dad?
He said that's all he knew.
So they head to find the doctor at his very Death Star-looking base, and when they encounter a guard, he takes some kind of viral steroid that turns him into a big Hulk bug. And when they blow his head off, it releases a toxic gas that turns other bugs into Hulk bugs too. After killing them, Rick says,
I hope killing these things is leveling us up.
which is the first video game reference of the episode, the second being towards the end when the general guy says,
Scanners show a big, scary, dramatic spore hive growing deep underground. Real, final boss vibes.
which just makes me think the writer's room was watching Solo Leveling or something while writing this episode. Anyways, the doctor guy walks in and explains that
Her Majesty refused to distribute my medicine.
which is why he had her killed and replaced with a robot copy who would explode a gas bomb of the virus at her birthday party to infect as many bugs as possible and take over the Empire. He then tries to blow them out the airlock, which obviously has no effect.
You really don't know me, do you?
And around his office, we see some biological experiments, what looks like a contained biome and a bug in the fetal stages over here. The doctor releases a bunch of new monster bugs, though, and makes his escape in the chaos, saying,
Living rent-free in your head.
a phrase he repeats so many times in the episode, it makes me think one of the writers had like a seething hatred for the phrase.
Living rent-free in your head. And in those minds will be me, paying no rent at all. I might even charge rent. No one gets to say the phrase rent-free after I die. It dies with me. I did everything you could do with it. Rent-free!
Anyways, he laughs maniacally and makes his escape while Rick and Beth fight the monster bug. The fight breaks into the next room, though, which is the break room. and we can see the classic "but first coffee" sign that annoying people love. And as they fight, more bugs get infected and turn super. Behind Beth, as she dons her energy blades, we see the daily hive and a water jug with, I think, blood in it. Beth absolutely destroys 3 bugs in a second while Rick spends like 10 seconds on 1 bug. But here we can see a "no litter bugs" sign, which is really funny. Rick then says they should call the Defiance as the whole Gromflemite planet is at stake, but Beth says no because
The Defiance sucks, but that doctor keeps trying to kill me. He is not getting the W. Oh God, I'm turning into my father.
So Rick suggests they just go to Gromflom 1 and portal the Decoy Queen toxic smoke bomb off planet. We then launch into an Ocean series style monologue about the plan over scenes of the plan actually happening. It's all centered around this guy from the post-credit scene, Cisco, who Rick apparently trusts as much as Bird Person.
Cisco's at the same level as Bird Person?
Yeah.
So he hinges the whole plan around him, but he doesn't show up and they just wind up having to wing it. It's an entertaining bit that was my favorite part of the episode personally. They wind up ramming into the Queen's car, and we can see her robot parts as they do. But the bugs manage to get her to the event anyways, and on stage right before the toxin bomb goes off. But as it goes off, Beth throws this little energy ball that expands into a bubble. And I might be crazy, but it reminds me very much of the Titan bubble from the Destiny franchise, especially if you sprint and slide before casting it. It looks basically just like that. But she does throw it, so who knows. Only pointing it out because of the other 2 video game references so far this episode. Anyways, I love the cooperation Rick provided by shooting a portal next to Beth before her bubble even went up, so she has somewhere to throw the bugs. But she does get stuck by the second one's horn right before chucking the Queen Bomb into the portal, and this wound winds up being enough to infect her with the virus. We cut to them barging into some sort of scientific bug facility, and Beth is looking rough. Rick offers to cure everyone if they help him cure Beth by letting him see all their research on the virus, and the General agrees but says they'll also need to destroy the newly formed spore hive after finding the cure. So they agree to a
tenuous alliance?
And they get to work on the cure, which is good because Beth is suddenly looking violently worse than before when she had like some dark shadows under her eyes. Rick starts testing by infecting a soldier though, and I love the expression on this bug's face when the General says,
"For your service, Federation stands strong and scrung with you."
So they poison him and he turns before Rick tests his first antidote, which works for a second before he explodes. Luckily, the General says a really folksy but dark and funny line.
"We're long on bugs and short on ethics,"
which puts a smile on Rick's face before he tests thousands of bugs in a compilation before finally making it work. He then binds it to his DNA and tests it on himself before celebrating when it works by saying,
"Turn on the cash!"
treating it like one of those old school money booths that I've only ever heard of. Anyways, Beth vomits and he cures her before we get a classic suit-up compilation for their attack on the Spore Hive, only to discover that there are like no bugs left after all of Rick's tests. So they decide to call in Bird Person and his daughter for backup, and all the Gromflemites are terrified of her. We cut to them entering the hive, and I love how Bird Daughter just rides the cure gas bomb into the hive. They obviously get swarmed and kill a bunch of bugs, and Bird Daughter is a badass and basically kills the entire first wave all by herself. This guy has a huge Bug State University sticker on his helmet, which is where he says his son is going to go to college. They finally reach the core, but it's guarded by even bigger bugs, so Bird Daughter turns her wings into a saw and chops their heads off. But the doctor shows back up riding the biggest bug yet and explains that he basically wants to be the new leader of the hive mind and rants about being rent-free as he laughs maniacally until the giant bug he's controlling also laughs, knocking him off the top. But when he puts him back on top, he just skewers him onto his horn. So Rick and Beth deliver the cure bomb and run like hell. The team barely escaping what definitely does not look like a cure bomb, but more like a regular bomb.
Time to deliver the payload.
Is the payload a bomb or a cure?
Who cares? It's a payload.
The General says that they should call a real truce between the Federation and the Defiance before we cut to the celebration with a bug pope of some kind over here and Bug Ann giving Rick and Beth medals before saying,
Pretty cool to see you working with your daughter. Pretty hot.
Okay.
Please don't fuck my coworkers.
Hey, you called me.
Obviously setting up the season finale when he does. We skip through the credits and the cutscene is Cisco. Turns out he overslept and missed the meeting with Rick because his new girlfriend got him addicted to bug cocaine.
More drugs?
Yes, please.
And that's all for this breakdown.
Oh shit, Morty. I think this little dude killed his Rick.
You really think so?
Oh, look, he buried him out front as a warning.
Ice cold. Is that a second, smaller grave?
Burnt down his house, too.
Christ, I didn't kill. Found it! Told you I checked between the seats.
When you're right, Morty. I admit that kind of stuff now.
And I can admit you're really changing. Assholes.
Welcome back to Nonsense. I'm Chris, and this is a breakdown of Rick and Morty, Season 8, Episode 3, The Rick, the Mort, and the Ugly. We open, as we rarely do, directly into the theme song, after which we see Rick and Morty flying through what's left of the Citadel while
collecting Citadel wreckage.
And we can immediately see the first Easter egg, which comes in the form of Season 5, Episode 10's Andy.
I'm Citadel's new mascot, Andy, because this place wouldn't be home without Rick's Andy Morty's.
Morty plays with his fidget spinner, setting up the ending scene and annoying Rick, who asks,
"Didn't the Egyptians invent those?"
Which, no, they did not. But the ancient Egyptians did have spinning tops, and they did have a small mace with little animal heads on each side that some geologists speculated could be akin to a fidget spinner like a decade ago. But no, the Egyptians did not invent fidget spinners. Anyways, suddenly a piece of space trash pierces the windshield, forcing them to make an emergency landing. So they fly over a small town where we see a Morty reading a magazine called Sex Vogue, which is a really on-the-nose name. He's out front of a general store and arcade, literally called Arcade, and there's a Morty with a horned skull mask playing with a yo-yo. As our Rick and Morty fly overhead, Morty asks,
Are they refugees?
Clones. Biotrash.
Since clones had no home dimension to go to, they just got stuck among the remains of the Citadel. They land on a crystal farm and start fixing the ship when a farmer Rick asks them what they're doing. Rick says he's just fixing their ship, which he then does before they get back in, and Morty asks,
What's that guy's deal?
Morty, I can't imagine anything worse than having to know.
A classic gag the show does on most Citadel episodes, where Rick essentially says nobody wants a Citadel episode in some form or another at the beginning of a Citadel episode. But I personally enjoy the Citadel episodes, and they do tend to have above average ratings. But anyways, they take off and we follow Farmer Rick as he goes through his farmer day, which he starts by feeding his genetically diverse pigs. They include a two-headed pig, a human pig, a cyclops pig, a wolf pig, and a three-eyed pig, who we can see has some strange mucus coming from his eyes and mouth that the others don't have. So Rick installs a divider to keep him from infecting the other pigs, then processes his crop through various steps into a liquid for his cloning chamber. Finally, he heads to the arcade general store we saw earlier, and on the way we can literally see some of the remains of the Citadel, as well as a piece of a sign that just says Rick's. He gets to the town though and enters the arcade, and we can see some Mortys playing back here. This Morty is eating a cup of noodles, which does make me wonder what all these Mortys eat. Anyways, Farmer Rick gives shop owner Morty his shopping list, and Morty has one of his employees get the stuff together for him. They hear a commotion outside, and it turns out to be a roving gang of Ricks, so Morty sounds the Rick alarm right before getting taken by one himself. The Ricks pillage the whole town and kidnap most of the Mortys, and we see a cool Elvis Rick over here. They wind up shooting Farmer Rick on the spot though, and leaving him for dead before blowing up the arcade and leaving. They head to the remains of another section of the Citadel, which seems a little more organized, and they sell them all the Mortys they manage to capture. We cut to a middle management Rick checking in on a biologist Rick's progress on his cloning machine. He tests it using a live Morty's blood, but it fails right as the leader of the roving Ricks asks for his payment for all the Mortys he brought them. And the middle management Rick points him to the boss's elevator, which is manned by Odd Job Rick, a clear reference to the James Bond character also named Odd Job. He gets to the top and we see an old-timey, almost Sherlock and Watson type Rick and Morty right here. There's also two dancer lady Ricks entertaining some male Ricks at these tables. And two Mortys are dressed as waitstaff, and this guy is using a Morty as a footstool. We then get a close-up of the Lady Rick performing on the stage, but she never opens her eyes. And I have to wonder what her name is. Supposedly Ricarda is the female version of Richard, but I was thinking maybe Ricky with 2 K's and an I. Either way, this gives a whole other level to Rick having said he had done it with other versions of himself in last season's Thanksgiving episode. They reach the leader, who has a Morty turn a crank on the back of his throne to turn it around to see them. And he turns out to be a Colonel Sanders Rick. He monologues for a bit about being a mascot Rick and wanting to build something. And you can see there's real organized construction going on. So the Citadel is definitely alive and well. He says his goal is to be able to manufacture Mortys again so that all the Ricks can be kings again. And the Raider guy finally gets paid in portal fluid. We then cut back to Farmer Rick getting stitched up by 2 of the medical droids. He gets up and drives home in his truck, only to find it in ruins. He even finds the burnt carcass of the 3-eyed pig out front. They also scrawled the note, "What grown man listens to Tori Amos" on his floor. And she's a relatively famous musician, best known for her song Spark. She seems to have been a child prodigy though, so maybe that's why this Rick liked her. They also wrote the note, "Here's some more shit for your ass, soy boy," on his CD of her. So he opens a hidden compartment of guns and loads a wooden 6-shooter, kind of John Wick style, before looking at a pendant with a picture of the 2-headed pig as if he's in love with it. He tosses it in the hole along with the pig carcass and then works on his droids and his pickup before setting out, something that they do pay off later. He used a glass shard from one of the Raiders' beer bottles to figure out where the Raiders are, and then chucks the piece of glass into the back only to hit a Morty, discovering that 2 Mortys stowed away with him, the 2 who worked at the arcade. And I didn't mention this earlier, but this Doc Morty is a Deadwoods reference. Anyways, they say they just want to rescue their friends, and he says he's just going to kill the guys who stole from him. But he agrees to let them tag along, saying he's just not gonna protect them. He turns the truck invisible as they approach the Raiders, and we cut to them splitting up the portal fluid and talking about where they're portaling to. This Rick, for some reason, keeps his portal fluid in a cloth, which seems stupid. One Rick in particular, though, takes his fluid to put in his locker, where Farmer Rick kills him. We then cut to the Ricks playing with these little boxing dice, setting them up for the post-credit scene. But Farmer Rick walks in and headshots all of them. Shopkeeper Morty interrogates racist Rick and finds out where the boss is, after which Farmer Rick immediately headshots him as well. More Ricks charge in, and one of them says Farmer Rick is Morty whipped, which is hilarious.
Morty whipped, son of a bitch!
In the ensuing fight, Shopkeeper Morty's friend Doc dies, but they do manage to clear the room pretty quickly. We cut to a hooved Rick struggling to inject a big Morty with 2 dead Mortys behind him.
They make me do this to bully me.
And Farmer Rick headshots him right before getting ambushed by Sanders Rick's crew. And he tells Farmer Rick he knows he was the old Citadel's lead cloning scientist, a reveal that makes Shopkeeper Morty pretty upset. But he gets even more upset when Sanders Rick reveals that all the local Mortys were recent clones that Farmer Rick had made and placed at the arcade. Sanders Rick offers Farmer Rick his job as head of cloning again, and he accepts, only to immediately create a giant monster Morty to attack Sanders Rick and his crew. In the chaos, Shopkeeper Morty manages to free the other Mortys, while Farmer Rick keeps showing off his insane headshotting ability. Then while the monster keeps rampaging, the group makes their escape, still headshotting like crazy. But when they get to the ship, Rick decides to send them away without him, staying back to distract the Ricks. And while they fly away, some of the Ricks have managed to kill the monster Morty, only to get run over by Farmer Rick's truck. He then deploys a turret and pulls out a bunch of big guns as his droids take off. He single-handedly manages to take everyone around him out while Sanders Rick sneaks back to his office to get his portal fluid. Farmer Rick keeps working his way through the compound but is pretty badly wounded, but somehow still headshotting everyone in sight. He literally kills everyone again, but loses an arm in the process this time. He then tries riding one of his drones up to the boss's office, but winds up getting shot down. Sanders Rick portals to him though and starts beating the crap out of him, but he triggers the bombs he had installed in his truck and all his drones from earlier, blowing up the entire Citadel and killing them both. The Mortys look at the newly formed crater from outer space, and the shopkeeper Morty convinces everyone they should stop forming new Morty towns and instead go off into the universe and live with people who aren't Ricks or Mortys. So they fly around letting each Morty find a place to live until it's just shopkeeper Morty who's left on the ship. And he decides to fly back and live in Farmer Rick's old house, even erecting graves for him and his dead friend Doc before settling down on his new porch. Then we get the scene from the opening of this video.
Hey, is your Rick around? I think my Morty dropped his fidget spinner down here. Oh shit, Morty. I think this little dude killed his Rick.
You really think so?
Oh, look, he buried him out front as a warning.
Ice cold. Is that a second, smaller grave?
Burnt down his house, too.
Christ, I didn't kill. Found it! Told you I checked between the seats.
When you're right, Morty. I admit that kind of stuff now.
And I can admit you're really changing. Assholes.
And honestly, this entire episode was the setup for this joke, and it's absolutely amazing. The joke obviously being how crazy the stark contrast is between socioeconomic classes in society. Like our Rick and Morty, considered like upper class Ricks and Mortys obviously, are talking up Rick's big emotional changes that have come from therapy, and that's awesome, and we shouldn't downplay it. But to someone whose basic survival is constantly at risk, like this Morty, that type of growth seems meaningless. You know, it's like first world problems, basically. And it's topped off by the fact that they also just assume the absolute worst about him, even though he's a good guy, which makes it even funnier. It's like hearing a celebrity talk about how important mental health is and how much they love therapy, and you're dumb if you don't use therapy, while you work your third job and still can't afford basic health care, let alone rent. So therapy is basically out of the question for you. It's just a very self-aware joke coming from a writer's room full of people who are definitely in positions of privilege, so well done. As someone who was homeless at 12 years old with my whole family and still had to listen to my wealthy church friends complain about how their vacations were 2 days shorter that year, this joke made me burst out laughing. But anyways, we skip through the credits to see more of the boxing dice. But I will note they definitely have Disney-style shoes, and even their animation is a little more wavy, like squishy squashy, than the rest of the show. That's all for this breakdown, though.
Oh no.
Welcome back to Nonsense, I'm Chris, and this is a breakdown of Rick and Morty Season 8, Episode 4, The Last Temptation of Jerry. We open on the house decorated for Easter, and Jerry trying to be festive while the whole family ignores him. At dinner, we see this bunny that definitely looks like the bunny from later in the episode. Jerry tries to get everyone excited for painting eggs on Easter and invites them to come out after dinner to buy egg paint. But they all decline. So when he's driving home alone after buying egg paint and for some reason even more decorations, he accidentally runs over a giant monster bunny. He freaks out and the theme song plays before he plops it down in front of the family asking for help. Rick scans it and finds an old German necklace from a specific town, and Jerry has a panic attack so goes to get water, only to chomp through some lettuce first instead. He tries to drink from a glass next, but can't, instead making a water dripper like in a hamster cage. Rick tests his DNA and discovers he's transforming into the monster bunny and will be fully transformed on Easter in 2 days. So he traps him in a crystal to slow the change while he and Morty go to the old German town. First sending Summer off to spring break with a fake ID and a second alcohol stomach before portaling to the town in Germany, immediately finding where the bunny thawed out and then walking through the town, which has a dark Easter festival going on with burning pyres for some reason. Religious people wearing bunny masks and little Easter-themed pop-up stands. They approach a stained glass Easter mural of the bunny with religious figures holding up eggs as an offering to it. Rick scans it and a bunch of the pieces come together to make an egg that Rick comments is from Andromeda, setting up the joke later where Morty can't remotely remember how to say the word.
Andromeda.
All right, to Amadabra!
Are you messing with me? Nice little mini arc.
And all it took was a trip to Amadabra!
After Rick realized that they need to go to Andromeda, though, they get approached by an alien Christ trooper who can detect that Rick's been near the Easter rabbit, and they demand he take them to it. So he portals Morty and the egg onto a roof while he absolutely cleans house. But unfortunately, one of the Christ Troopers manages to get the egg from Morty and escape. He takes the egg to his boss, where they reveal a really funny gag that the angelic music we'd been hearing throughout the fight scene, which we'd assumed was the soundtrack of the show, was actually diegetic audio of this guy playing his alien instrument. The boss guy orders the trooper guy to go to Andromeda, where the egg came from, and destroy all the eggs but one in order to use it to catch Jerry. As he takes off from the mothership, they do this really funny flight animation like it's flapping side to side, which is funny since it does have wings. We cut to Jerry transforming and flexing out of the crystal Rick trapped him in. Beth takes an anime girl pose before we cut to them post-coitus and about to start on round 2, before getting interrupted by Jerry's transformation into a rabbit as he runs off. Then we do an Indiana Jones-style map travel, following Rick and Morty from the Milky Way to Andromeda. And there are a couple details here. For the first, labeled Gigante, or Gigante, which is Spanish for giant. It's not the name of any celestial body I'm aware of, so I assume it's supposed to be a label for the supermassive black hole at the center of our universe. It also has north, south, east, and west annotations, which is funny for space travel. And finally, Cthulhu over here. Also, the center of the Andromeda Galaxy is an egg for the sake of the episode. So we cut to them portaling onto an unknown planet, and the vibes take a shift from Indiana Jones hard into the Alien franchise instead. We immediately see a skull with bunny teeth and a giant statue which is clear alien themed. There's also eggs everywhere, which is obviously Easter themed, but the creepy vibes also make it alien themed. They encounter another mural depicting how the bunny spirit goes into the egg, then into whoever opens the egg or whoever kills the person who is currently the bunny. Something we'll see happen like 50 times at the end of the episode. They then notice the giant alien-themed throne, with these two being the most obvious visual nod to the xenomorphs. They have to duck behind a rock though because these big guys show up, and they are an obvious nod to the engineers from the Alien franchise, most prominently seen in Alien Prometheus, which is why Rick later says,
"That's the whole plot of Alien Prometheus."
Wow, sounds memorable!
Anyways, they realize these guys make the eggs, but then the Christ Troopers break in, attempting to destroy all the eggs. So in the commotion, Rick and Morty grab the egg, causing one of the troopers to hilariously call Rick a dentist.
I'm the dentist!
One of the troopers manages to shoot Rick's portal gun though, so Rick throws the fluid on him and they escape through some kind of hatch. And I just love the effect of the portal fluid on this guy. It's really well animated. Rick makes a rolling the stone away from Christ's tomb joke here and flips the troopers off. They come out of what obviously looks like a butt with diarrhea and take one of the Christ troopers' ships, which looks like an Easter egg island statue. We cut back to Jerry, who's now line dancing at a bar before he starts using his new rabbit powers on everyone. But in the back, we can see this really funny bit they did where the bar got a C rating from the health department, but they added letters so it says credit accepted instead. There's also some generic signs over here, but this one cuts off so it just says fancy cock, which is funny, and a license plate over here that just says love beer. Anyways, Jerry uses his powers and everybody starts fucking, including the bouncer who fucks his motorcycle. The Christ Troopers show up though and capture him before we cut back to Rick and Morty landing on Easter Island, which I assume is the only pre-programmed destination on Earth. The troopers take Morty hostage and their leader takes off his mask and explains that all they want is to destroy the Easter Bunny so it stops destroying planets. At which point the ship with Jerry arrives and seizing Morty causes him to finish transforming and escape. He massacres all the troopers and runs off across the world back to Beth. But seeing her afraid of him makes him stop rampaging and lay down. So Beth grabs a bunch of stuff to tie him up, and we cut back to Rick and Morty, who now land by the house, and Beth calls them into the garage where she's managed to trap Jerry, and Rick uses the egg and a rigged together machine to suck the rabbit spirit out of Jerry into the egg. But one of the engineer guys shows up to free the rabbit again, and Rick accidentally infects himself before we just run through a montage of everyone being the rabbit a couple times, while random people create a fuck pile before the engineer guy winds up dead, surprisingly by the Christ Trooper guy's hands from earlier, who then takes the egg and leaves. And him still being alive, despite being cut in half, is obviously, to me at least, a joke about explaining how Jesus was still alive after being crucified. They just assumed he was dead, but this species basically never dies, at least not from wounds. Anyways, since they hate Easter now, they decide to do a montage of destroying all holidays, funniest of which is Labor Day, during which they do office work, which is hilarious. Anyways, they end the montage by destroying Christmas before realizing,
Is Summer still at spring break?
and then we just see Summer with a bunch of other exhausted spring breakers who formed a little society. We follow her into a religious tent for someone named Madison, and this guy makes an offering, and his eyes are stitched shut, what is the lore here? I am so curious. We then see Madison on her pool chair throne with 2 bodyguards, each holding a stripped beach umbrella as a weapon, which is honestly hilarious. Anyways, Summer becomes Madison's favorite, and we skip through the credits to watch the Christ Trooper return to his very religious architecture-y house after 20 years in space to try to get his wife to bang him, but she obviously says no, and he says,
I have lived my life poorly.
The final Indiana Jones reference of the episode.
He chose poorly.
And that's all for this breakdown. This is a breakdown of Rick and Morty Season 8, Episode 5, Cryo-Mort or Rickford. We open on Rick and Morty encountering a big, quiet ship in the middle of space and deciding to investigate. On board, they find a bunch of people in stasis, and Rick learns that they
flung themselves into space after wrecking their homeworld.
They find a giant safe containing hypercoal, and Rick wants it, so he asks for Morty's help as he pulls out some explosives and says my favorite line of the episode.
This'll be quick, they got fast countdowns.
Morty doesn't want to blow up the ship though, so he tries to take the explosives and winds up setting them off, causing an alarm to go off, and the two rush to find 2 pods to get into before everybody on the ship wakes up, because Rick still wants his hypercoal. Rick stretches their ears to look like the aliens, and they both pretend to have just woken up. It turns out Rick was in the kids section though, and there's no crying in cryo sign up here. Rick was in a kid named Jimmy's pod though, and his parents rush in, terrified, thinking that he aged during cryosleep, and Rick starts angling to get the hypercoal. Meanwhile, Morty wakes up in the Mickey's cryo section. Obviously a reference to the movie Mickey 17, where they're all Mickeys and the titular character is used in a futuristic space society for ridiculous manual labor tasks and treated like a subhuman, just like all these guys are. We learn that all the Mickeys get compliance chips to keep them from rebelling or even complaining about working conditions or food. Cut to Rick trying to hack into the hypercoal vault and surprisingly failing when his parents walk up and he excuses himself for being there by claiming he's dumb, which sets up a great joke by the mom.
That's all right, sweetie. Money affords us the ability to be dumb.
Because yeah, that is a fact. It's one of those jokes where it's only funny because it's 100% accurate and obvious, but general society still can't grasp the base concept for some reason. Anyways, they tell him they're throwing him the alien equivalent of a bat mitzvah, and as soon as he learns it includes access to the hypercoal, he agrees. Meanwhile, Morty cleans feces out of a pipe before going to dinner, where one of the Mickeys gets compliance shocked when he complains about the food. We then cut to later, and Rick is in his little sailor suit eating a big lollipop, a sentence I never thought I'd be saying in my life. And Morty approaches him wanting to get out, even attacking him when Rick says not yet, but some Mickeys pull him away right as the parents arrive, and the Mickeys ask why Morty didn't get compliance shocked when he attacked Rick, only to discover he doesn't have a chip. So he claims he pulled it out, causing the others to do the same, even though pulling it out is supposed to kill them. Luckily it doesn't, and they all celebrate as they plot their new rebellion. Meanwhile, Rick is receiving his religious outfit for the ceremony and getting showered in affection, before we cut back to Morty, who's just accidentally leading a rebellion now. We see the Mickeys have been building weapons, managing to make a rifle of some sort, and clubs made from table legs they call
Bang Bang,
which is pretty caveman-y. These are still space engineers, aren't they? Anyways, they decide to attack during Rick's ceremony, and we cut to him taking silly pictures right at its beginning. Then as he's performing the ceremony, which just seems to be drinking a bunch of wine, the Mickeys start their attack. They all start killing each other, but Rick is specifically worried about his fake parents, so Morty takes them hostage and demands the hypercoal, a ruse that Rick goes along with. So they open the hypercoal safe, but it turns out to be empty, and when the rest of the aliens catch up, they blame Rick and Morty. But the parents defend them, saying the safe was already empty when they opened it. But it turns out in the old logs it even shows that the people Rick and Morty are pretending to be were the last ones to access the vault together. So Rick removes the fake ears and reveals that they're aliens who just snuck aboard and were faking it. We cut to him showing them the bones of the kid, but when he scans them it turns out to be monkey bones. So he checks the security system and discovers that the two really had robbed their people. And Morty finds them flaunting their new wealth on social media on a planet called Blackjack 9. So everybody takes off to get the money from the kid and the old man, and we cut to the two in a casino. And in the wide shot, we get a guest appearance from the snail alien in the Precogs episode from later this season. The two are enjoying themselves, though, until the news comes on and puts up pictures of them saying they stole lots of money. So they sprint aboard their flying space mega yacht filled with glowing electrified hypercoal and take off through a very generic casino planet while being chased by everyone who wants the hypercoal. They chase them out into space before Rick manages to land on the yacht. He yells at the kid for not appreciating his parents, and a short brawl breaks out before Morty just pulls the cargo release latch and launches the valuables into space. But even that doesn't stop people from fighting over it. Luckily, the parents survive and lecture Jimmy about robbing his whole species before Rick helps them all find a new planet to fly to and installs new compliance chips on everyone, which just seems like a terrible idea, but whatever. So Rick says goodbye and we cut to the duo back out in space afterwards as they get another notification about a new cryo ship and decide to go check it out. We skip through the credits, and the only way I can make this make sense is by putting the clips together. So here are 3 clips from throughout the episode and then the actual post-credits scene in the casino.
Monkey bones. Was Jimmy a monkey?
Lizzie! No! I thought you escaped!
Can't bring back Lizzie, but he can buy another monkey that I will also name Lizzie. New Lizzie, think about this. That's all our money. We were gonna start a new life. Oh, Jesus.
And a full house for the monkey.
New Lizzie! I always knew you could do it.
And that's all for this breakdown.
Welcome back. This is a breakdown of Rick and Morty, Season 8, Episode 6, The Q Rixus Case of Betherman Button.
We open on Beth and Jerry asleep in bed.
Beth gets a call from the horse hospital, and as she gets up, we intercut scenes of Space Beth essentially doing the same thing, but to a space crime emergency. In Space Beth's place, we mostly just see empty bottles and dirty laundry everywhere. Specifically also a bra here. I wonder if it's hers or maybe a partner's. We've got a very plump pillow down here, and she's working on either a robot or maybe a suit. There's a crystal here. I'm curious if it's maybe a death crystal. And also just the head and beak of some kind of bird creature. Some kind of spike ball here and then just a bone. During this intercut compilation, though, the amazing original Cheers theme plays in all its slightly abridged glory. It was a nice listen, and juxtaposed well against what we were seeing visually. The song being about needing to go somewhere where you feel like you belong and feeling that happiness. With the implication here being that despite us seeing the Beths doing what they want to be doing, they're not happy, and they definitely don't feel like they belong. Anyways, Beth operates on a horse, and Space Beth breaks into some kind of criminal weapons stockpile, where a gang had been holding a kidnapped victim. The 3 henchmen she fights are kind of funny. They're all animal-themed: rhino, monkey, and hammerhead shark. With the hammerhead already looking at her with his head still turned the other way when she breaks the door down, which is a funny detail that's only on screen for a split second. Beth uses that phase shifting ability we've seen her use when she touches her forehead to get behind the henchmen and takes them all down. Both Beths wrap up their respective jobs, get thanked by strangers, and eat in the car on the way home. Beth eating a fast food burger, and Space Beth eating Ration Type K breakfast unit and a can of Gouda cheese. They both arrive at home after long nights to Rick setting up the B-plot by saying,
"Who's ready for Earthworld?"
and the Beths gently signaling they weren't going by saying,
"We did it! Fuck you!"
Rick then says,
"Fine, but nobody wants to see a Beth's adventure."
An ongoing gag where Rick says something along the lines of, nobody wants to see X or Y at the beginning of an episode about that very thing.
Anyone continuing to explore the Citadel is either stupid or one of the unfortunate millions held hostage by their terrible ideas.
Man, I'm glad I'm not one of them.
After the family heads off to Earthworld, the Beths start talking about the actual theme of the episode, the idea that no matter which path you've chosen for yourself in life, happiness is not guaranteed.
I hate my life, and I know you have to hate yours.
A theme that's definitely ever present in the show, but is front and center here. We cut to the Beth sipping wine outside and accepting that it can't be Jerry or Rick's fault that they're both still unhappy. And Earth Beth wishes she could be young again, to which Space Beth gives the very Rick response.
That kind of wish never goes the way you want.
Before doing the very Rick thing by immediately doing it anyway. And I gotta say, Space Beth has earned more than a streak of Rick's signature blue in her hair. I hope by the series finale she's gone full blue, honestly. But right before she starts the de-aging process, she says,
"Oh, no. Technology this advanced is indistinguishable from magic."
Virtually an exact quote from Arthur C. Clarke's Third Law. Space Beth sets the age to 10 years old and de-ages Beth, outfit and all. And young Beth then immediately runs off, and we cut to the rest of the family as they're arriving at Earth World. Rick remembers it as being a rundown, dangerous theme park, but it's been Disney-fied. The entry area is clearly modeled after Main Street USA at Disney World, even being called Main Road. There's a human stuff shop and an I Earth Earth shirt, which is kind of funny. The statue in the middle, obviously a reference to Walt Disney himself. There's a wagon selling jewelry made from human teeth, the moving spectacular sidewalk that this alien in particular seems too excited to be riding. There's even this bouquet of Earth balloons, just like the kind they sell at Disney. These hilarious light-up corn dogs, great pun. At the photos with humans thing, Morty points out Marie Curie and John Legend, and this is obviously supposed to be Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There are a lot of these big head characters, and I'm not great with celebrities, so I'm not going to name everyone, just the ones I recognize. If you know any of the ones that I miss, feel free to leave it in the comments. Here we can see Jerry actually bought a light-up corn dog, which is classic him. Here, though, Morty says one of the most concerning lines.
I'm not gonna shit on it too hard, because I know you'd punish me, but...
And this should be concerning, because if you think about it, Morty has less access to free speech than the rest of us. He's terrified that if he mildly irritates Rick, he'll torture him in some insane way, as he has before. I know it's funny as the viewer, but from Morty's perspective, it would honestly be kind of scary. But anyway, Jerry walks into the Hall of President's Pets, which I am honestly surprised isn't already a thing at Disney World. I'd say there's a 20% chance we see it within our lifetime, though. Morty bumps into a hot alien chick who has a fetish for Earth humans, and that basically becomes his story for the episode. Back here, there's a shirt with the acronym of Earth World, which just spells out UW on top of a picture of Earth, which made me chuckle. Another Earth items type shop sign, and the guy who walks away here stole those sunglasses, which is really funny. We cut back to Space Beth looking for Kid Beth, and we see some great chalk paintings on the wall, as well as several blades on the ground. Obviously, there's the head chopped off guy here, the horse here, and a frowning sun. Not sure why this butterfly is dripping, or what this red thing is supposed to be. Kid Beth jump scares Space Beth, excited to have violently murdered a possum. Which, yeah, that fits with what we know about young Beth.
It was just more practical to sequester you before I had to start, cloning a replacement for every less than polite little boy or gullible animal that might cross your sociopath.
So Space Beth re-ages Earth Beth, who immediately says,
"You have got to try it."
I'm over here.
Okay.
Kid Space Beth then tricks Earth Beth into de-aging herself, and we can kind of see the trick box setup over here that Space Beth uses to trap her. But inside the fort, we see drawings of Rick's ship and Rick himself, as well as a little house. Beth climbs up this part of the fort here and reaches for what she thinks is Kid Beth, but is actually a trick, and she falls down the trapdoor into the aging machine. She looks at Kid Beth and says,
"Do it."
After she wakes up, there really is no distinguishing difference between the two Kid Beths. I stared for a while and could not spot anything. But anyways, they destroy the aging machine and then start kids screaming together before we cut back to the rest of the family, who we think are using some weird bathrooms, but it turns out to be a bathroom-themed ride. And I also love how they do the fake blue sky painted on a wall thing. Classic theme park. We also see one of these guys from the pilot episode. Then while Jerry's going in the bushes, we get another really direct Disney reference in the form of this Earth World hat, which is literally shaped like a Mickey head. And it's this guy who tells them that the park founder is still alive underneath the park. So they disguise themselves as big heads and head down into the tunnels. We cut to the backyard where we see the Beth's expanded fort. There's a bunch of stuffed animals' heads on spikes over here to ward off enemies, of course. A big fish about to eat smaller fish over here. Another two frowny faces here as well, and a really well-made cardboard dragon. And when the camera shifts to the treehouse, we can see the outline of the two graves down here. The two Beths are watching horrifying news stories while smiling and eating Fruit Loops. There's a best friends forever sign, the two of them holding hands, and presumably one of the decapitated stuffed animals whose heads are outside here. One Beth tells the other about some traps, and they decide to get Gene to get hurt by them. As they enter Gene's room, we see he literally has a G for his name on his door, which just seems weird to me. But then he also has the entire Twilight collection here. So maybe he's just a basic bitch. The Beths keep egging each other on to be more violent, to the point where I'm wondering if Morty's kid didn't get his violent urges from Beth too. Morty and the alien girl get off a traffic jamboree ride, which is funny, just the idea that it's a fun experience worth replicating, when in reality, 99% of humans hate traffic. The girl just keeps fetishizing Morty for being a human in worse and worse ways, and we cut to Rick, Summer, and Jerry in the tunnels. There's some standard work posters here. The mascots of the month has Hitler on it, and I think the Swan Lake lady. Not sure about these two. The big head Kevin Costner points them to where they can find the founder, the mascot design and maintenance office, where we finally meet the founder, Dr. Toboggan. Wait, no, Dr. Dogballs, played by Mantis Toboggan, who is played by Danny DeVito. His office looks cool, but doesn't pack much detail. He's clearly obsessed with the minutia of being a human. A coffee cup preserved, a toaster and a fork, suicide joke, and a box that says Supreme. Anyways, it turns out he got locked up in his office after getting caught watching Animal on animal porn, which is definitely better than bestiality, but still weird and still perfect for a Danny DeVito character. Rick frees him from his ankle chain, and in return, Dr. Dogballs shows him the old version of Earthworld that Rick remembers fondly. It's obviously full of hilarious horrors, starting immediately here with Falling Nightmare, the ride. Here we have Who Is Stalking You, followed by Pain 4D, with Confederate soldiers wearing 3D glasses. Blood alcohol simulator here, which, yeah, sign me up. Probably Rick's favorite activity. This just says burgers. Not sure about that. There's a porta potty with, I think, grass pouring out of it. Down here there's a snakes only stand with snakes literally built into the stand itself. Up at the top right here, I can't figure out what this was supposed to spell, but I am very curious. If there's any Wordle experts, I'd be curious to hear what you've got. But yeah, overall, just a terrifying theme park that I would definitely visit. If I was basically immortal like Rick, but definitely not as the mere mortal that I am. Continuing on, we have Workplace Outbreak with pictures of sick coworkers. A sign that says, "Come watch crime at 10 a.m., clearly referencing Human Crime Watch organizations, which is a really clever joke, especially for a background joke. Lastly, and probably my favorite though, is just Suicide Bridge, which is a crazy ride name and is absolutely hilarious. Anyways, Jerry gets covered in snakes, to which Rick reacts.
At least Jerry got hurt.
And then we cut back to Gene in the kitchen, making the Beth some hot cocoa, and his shopping list is just milk and cabbage. I mean, they are really making him out to be the blandest character, which is funny, and I'm just surprised he has any alcohol around instead of like prune juice and oatmeal or something, but I guess that makes it all the funnier when the two Beths egg each other on to brutally attack him. They then feel kind of bad about it and start blaming each other and fighting until they set the house on fire. They run away, leaving Gene to survive on his own, which he thankfully does. One of the Beths returns to the treehouse to find the drawing from earlier defaced, and the sign turned to Best Enemies Forever. The other Beth then attacks her. They fight and set this house on fire too, but the Diane AI puts it out. Which one Beth uses to surprise attack the other? Who uses an old reference?
Look at some of the shit you were asking me to make you as a kid. Ray guns, a whip that forces people to like you, a teddy bear with anatomically correct innards.
To defend herself from the attack, they keep fighting. At one point, a bucket door trap has melted crayons and push pins, which is so specific I feel like it's a reference, but I don't know it. As they kept fighting, Gene calls 911, but Rick intercepts the call, setting up the after credits cutscene. But let's slow down this ride they're on for a second, because it is weirdly interesting. Let's start with just the audio though, which says,
Earth's World War II was fought with combines and harvesters, and you're about to witness it firsthand.
Setting up what we're seeing flash by, which is the same bits of farm equipment repeating over and over. They're interesting though, and my favorite part is the cow sticking its head out of the seemingly tiny barn. Unless this is just a huge cow. This is just one loop that they play over and over though, of the same assets, which makes sense because it's hard to see at normal speed. Something that's a borderline animation mistake, though, is that the only thing we see behind them are buildings that look nothing like what we're seeing on the side. Anyways, once Rick gets the 911 intercept call, he stops the ride by putting his hand on the track, which is just badass. Rick then finally cedes that.
Morty was right. Am I supposed to think it's cool that there's measles in the water and snakes? Nah, you guys have fun.
The ride then continues to take Summer, Jerry and the doctor down the track into the Battle of Iwo Jima, which is just basically like a meat grinder. Cut back to the neighborhood and there's what's presumably a not official, but functioning fire truck out front, putting the fire out and saving Gene. Rick shows up and pays them, so they leave. He then puts out the rest of the fire by seemingly smothering it, which I just love how many guns he has for every purpose. He then heals Gene's hand, using the same device we saw him use on Morty in Season 5, Episode 9. He then goes after the Beths and deduces that they've been
huffing childhood and have overdosed on.
He sets off a bunch of booby traps. Beth rules with a Z. He heals himself with this awesome healing ray and triggers another trap when looking out the window. He chooses to wrap the wound this time and then pulls out a John Wick looking pistol and blows the treehouse up with a single shot, which, yeah, badass. They attack him together, and he pulls out these awesome little auto-expanding cubes that capture them. We cut back to the Danny DeVito character. This is a rabid animals-themed ride called Rabies River, which simultaneously scary and sad. In this section of the park, we have the secondhand smokehouse. There's spleen remover, Murderborn. Anyways, they walk into it following the doctor, who wants to show them his work. And for this part, I'm only going to point out the ones I recognize. If you recognize any, please leave it in the comments. This is clearly Steve Jobs. This is Marilyn Monroe. Hitler. That cereal mascot, the It clown, obviously. Muhammad Ali. And this here is hilariously a self-insert Danny DeVito, who, like I said, is voicing the Doctor character, who reveals that he believes that the greatest tribute to Earth is a theme park that ends in chaos. He then makes this hilarious reference to the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disney, specific to an actual bump in the ride.
You're on a boat ride when suddenly you take a detour to a waterfall, and now you're in a pirate's den, forced to suck dick to stay alive.
So he activates a big ray that turns all the big-headed park monsters from docile employees to bloodthirsty murderers. And while he's delivering part of his monologue, the Danny DeVito big head just stands up directly behind him. And it's so direct I love it. But it gets better because he joins two other big heads to eat his Dr. Dogballs character alive. And this is just such a great Danny DeVito character. I love this little guest star role they gave him. Anyways, Summer and Jerry expand their heads and escape the room, and we get a quick shot of a Ted Danson big head and a Weird Al big head both eating someone. Meanwhile, Morty's making out with the alien chick in a supply closet, which Morty is happy about and saying weird human things to give in to her fetish, but then she says,
Ooh, say something racist.
What?
Come on, you're human. It's your whole thing.
And this finally crosses the line for Morty, which is fine, because after ranting for a bit, she gets eaten by John Legend, and this person who is definitely someone, I just don't know who. So Morty runs away, and we see the janitor experience, which is, again, sad, funny. And I think this is Tony Hawk. This sign is for dog soup, which is horrifying. Group imagination room, which sounds like just an empty room. Human trash, which sounds funny. And a phone booth to literally watch paint dry. We then see the mosquito pavilion, the city hall crawl, just divorced apartments, and the carpet sample stunt show. Then while Morty's backing away from the entire Culkin family in one body, we see Hipster Coffee and Cat Scratch Cafe. And back here there's a Welcome Serial Killer Paradise sign. I assume leading to like a cabin in the woods situation. Then there's the tunnel of divorce back here before Morty stabs the Culkins and runs off. We cut back to the garage where Rick is getting ready to re-age the Beths. And here we start getting back to the focus of the episode when Rick says,
I don't have time to be your dad.
You never did.
And obviously it's saying that Beth acted up as a child because she had a neglectful, probably borderline evil father. And she is also a genius, so that comes with its own set of challenges even if you grow up in a healthy environment, which she did not. Rick doesn't feel responsible for this though, since he didn't actually do it, so he just mutes them in response, which isn't really a healthy way to manage kids expressing their emotions. But I digress. The Beths manage to make up and trick Rick into letting them out, then they trap him in the machine and age him up to 360 years old. He looks awesome as an old man though, minus the eye crust, obviously. He's got a lot of just fully robot parts though, the eye, a leg, and an arm, even though he already is mostly robot at this point. But the Beths drag him out and start beating the ever-loving shit out of him, while screaming about how he abandoned them. Rick finally breaks down and says it wasn't him, that his Beth died when she was younger than they are. They all start crying and telling each other how they feel. The Beths express all the rejection they felt and still feel. Rick expresses that he's proud of them and says,
You're both my daughters.
It's a very heartfelt moment on both sides. The Beths were never unhappy because of where they were in life. They were unhappy because of deep-rooted emotional trauma that they never processed. And even this little bit of communication about it is enough to bring a lot of healing. And it's just really nice to see. I hope we all get these moments in our lives, just minus the violence, ideally. We cut to a few hours later, and Rick is de-aged again, fixing up their treehouse for them. Cut back to Earthworld to see something called baseball, just the food, which does sound awful to me personally. Summer runs through the parking lot, and at first it seems like she's about to save this guy, but just takes his car keys instead, which have a cute alien version of Patrick Star on them from SpongeBob. Her and Jerry then meet up with Morty and try to find the car that they have the keys to. This is clearly someone, but I don't know who. Summer makes Morty put on the head of a monster to blend in, and it's really funny to watch. Anyways, they find the car, Wendy is here, and Morty has to drive since he's the only one with a normal size head. So they take off, and we cut back to the opening sequence again, with the Cheers theme playing and everything. But this time, it's not juxtaposed, because the Beths have found somewhere they feel they belong. They found acceptance and healed their inner child, if only a little. Then the rest of the family crash lands into the backyard, screaming and crying. Skip through the credits, and we see Rick's fake 911 voicemail for Gene, saying to leave a message if it's an emergency, which is hilarious. And we hear Gene's 911 calls from throughout some of the series. None of them directly corresponded to any specific events I could think of, though. But please let me know if you recognize any in the comments. That's all for this breakdown, though.
No one's more creative than James Gunn.
Welcome back to Nonsense. I'm Chris, and this is a breakdown of Rick and Morty, Season 8, Episode 7, Ricker Than Fiction.
We open on a battlefield and immediately have the first and most obvious Easter egg. The aspect ratio is set to a cinematic widescreen for the scenes taking place within the movie universe, but switches back to standard 16:9 for the in-universe scenes. On one side of the battle, there's these evil plant people, led by Baron Thistle. And given that this whole episode is a Marvel, or at least a superhero reference, I have to point out it's a reference to Baron Zemo. But honestly, he reads more Bond villain than anything else. On the other side of the battle are the Robo-Trees, our Marvel / Fast and Furious / DC stand-in heroes. And they are also numbered for some reason that I can't figure out, since they also have names, and it doesn't seem to indicate rank. But first up we have number 4, and the leader of the team, Arbor Knight. Sword and shield make me think he's a cross between Captain America, Wonder Woman, and an Arbor Tree. Arbor Tree is also famous by name for Arbor Day, which is actually just about all trees, not just arbor trees, but maybe in this world it's his birthday or something. We also find out at the end that this robo-leaf canopy on his head is not even meant to be his leaves, but just his hat, signifying he's the leader, which is hilarious and makes no sense. Next up is number 1, Redwood. He's got a pistol and is called a hothead, so closest thing I can come up with is a cross between the Human Torch, Red Hood, and a redwood tree. Redwood trees are of course famous for making up the forest moon of Endor in Star Wars. Third is number 2, who is called Palm d'Or. Not a real type of tree, but is a direct reference to the best award a film can get at the Cannes Film Festival. And since this tree is supposed to be a genius, I'm guessing he's the Iron Man stand-in. And he also spins his little palms to be able to fly. Next is number 3, Cypress, whose role is being the
Girl boss lady,
which is hilarious, and obviously a reference to Black Widow, hence the lips. And lastly, we have number 5, Tannenbaum, the German word for fir tree aka Christmas trees, who has an awesome rocket board for like 2 seconds. I'm not sure who he's the stand-in for, but based on them referencing him as a kid's toy, I'm guessing someone along the lines of Rocket, even though he's a genius, so maybe Hulk? I mean, out of all superhero characters who looks most like a toy to you, I'd guess the Hulk, but this character's vibe is unlike any hero I can think of personally. Anyways, the Robo-Trees enter battle against Baron Thistle's army of plant goons and demand he disarm the Carnation Casket, some kind of Carnation-powered doomsday device. We cut back to reality, and Rick and Morty are complaining about the movie while Jerry is absolutely loving it. And if this isn't the writers insulting people who've enjoyed this most recent phase of the MCU, I don't know what is. Both Baron Thistle and the Robo-Trees spend most of their lines trying to explain the science behind the Doomsday device and how to stop it, something I think we're all a little tired of in superhero movies. If we can suspend disbelief to watch a drunken hammer god fly around, we don't need it to make fake scientific sense. Anyways, they're all about to follow Iron Tree's plan to disable the Doomsday device. But before they start, Tannenbaum reintroduces every character, to which Morty replies,
this is the 9th movie!
Die, Tannenbaum, you suck!
Guys!
They stop the device using science and punching, but Baron Thistle escapes like a Bond villain on a helicopter, with leaves and thorns on it. And Tannenbaum makes what I honestly think could be a real joke in the MCU.
Let's go home.
Yeah, I need a bath.
The credits roll, and we see it was written and produced by James Gunn, setting him as the cameo. However, most of these names are the names of people who actually work on the show. Catherine Wheaton was a production assistant, Daniel Kachatourian was a production manager, Jackie Cadiente worked in character design, Julia Glassman was an animation supervisor. Brent Knoll was an effects designer. Jack Inguanti was a design coordinator. Steve Levy is a producer. Maya S. is probably Maya Shazvin, a character designer. Byron Merrill, it just says, worked in the animation department. Ryan H. There's a Ryan Hansen who's voice acted on the show for 2 episodes, but I doubt it was him. Zach V. and Justin V. don't seem to have worked on the show. Brad Lewis is also a character designer. Kelly Yu is a prop designer. Helen Bell is yet another character designer. And Ryan Cohen is a technical director, and also here as a yes man. Guessing that's an inside joke for the crew. Noel Rawlick is a design assistant. Will McCarthy is here as his actual job for Rick and Morty. Sean Bodley is a background designer. And lastly, Jennifer Vogan is an associate producer. The song they play here is also great, but since we can't fully hear it until they replay it during the credits, I'm going to break it down at the end. We cut back to Rick and Morty as they complain about the movie. We see the crystallized xanthanite from the interdimensional cable episodes for a second, while Rick literally pisses on the TV before going Karen and saying,
I want to talk to the manager!
Smash cut to the WB water tower, and then into James Gunn's office. We see posters for some of the other movies in the franchise. They all just say Maximum Velocity though. We also see some toys, action figures, and a replica of the plane we see them fly. Down here is The Art of Super, and a book just titled Comics. Rick, Morty, and Jerry portal in and confront James Gunn, who obviously is actually voice acted by James Gunn himself, which is awesome. Rick chucks his desk through the roof and demands he stop focusing the movies on
stupid comic relief characters!
And the dialogue here is very poignant. It's clear they are directly addressing the internet discourse over the most of the recent superhero movies. I mean, James literally says,
the next Maximum Velocity movie has been rewritten 40 times.
Which has been famously true about a lot of the recent Marvel movies like Captain America, Brave New World, Thor Love and Thunder, The Marvels, Ant-Man Quantumania, even the well-reviewed Thunderbolts, which is the best entry they've released in a while, was rewritten to death. So between this dialogue and the fact that they basically make an AI movie creator, I'd say this is the most on-the-nose pop culture critique Rick and Morty have ever done.
Know what will make fans like you like it? A fucking miracle.
Anyways, Rick steals James's script for the next Maximum Velocity movie and says he's gonna fix it before portaling home. Jerry reads through the script and loves it, but Morty takes it back and Rick introduces
the Movie-lizer! They invented it during the title sequence.
A classic fourth wall break from Rick as he loads the script into the machine. We see it was written by Alan Smithtree, which is a reference to the name Alan Smithy, a pseudonym used by directors who don't want their names attached to a film. It originated in Death of Gunfighter when the original director was replaced 2/3 of the way through filming, and neither director wanted their names attached, claiming the film was not what they had envisioned. Pretty fitting for most late-phase Marvel movies. Anyways, the machine starts the movie, and Rick fast-forwards through some pretty standard movie shots. Then they decide to get rid of Baron Thistle as the villain by having Tannenbaum shoot his head off. Then Rick has him imprisoned for
unlicensed murder!
Before typing in,
make us care!
Which causes it to glitch out and pull Rick and Morty into the movie. The 6-second scene, which I think is supposed to represent them being digitized, was super interesting to look at frame by frame, but unfortunately didn't seem to contain any Easter eggs. Just some pictures from the movie along the walls and then some really interesting forms they take, but afterwards they threw up weird digital matter before realizing they're in the movie. The Robotrees immediately attack though, and Jerry figures out he can talk to them through the mic before using the keyboard to generate an awesome getaway vehicle for them. And I love the detail that the car is generated by a text cursor. And the car sets up my favorite line of the episode.
It's a family sedan! Shoot it!
Anyways, they make their escape and ask Jerry to.
Type that we skip to the end and everything works out!
But he says he can't because the system says there's no antagonist and therefore no way to have a third act and end the movie. And then we get another really good shot at movie rewrites when Jerry says,
You cut a bunch of stuff out willy-nilly. What did you expect?
So they decide to revive Baron Thistle, and his mausoleum has a great line on it. Here lies Baron Thistle. He died doing what he loved, hating trees. Rick attaches jumper cables to the dead body and jumpstarts him back to life. He immediately bites Morty though, and Rick kills him out of concern for Morty. But the bite causes Morty to transform into the new antagonist of the film, and Jerry says this has gotten them back on track, but they still need to complete the narrative. And while he's talking, we see the exact story circle that Dan Harmon uses in all his stories, including every episode of Rick and Morty. Jerry says they're almost done, but since Baron Thistle was going to kill Tannenbaum, Morty now has to do it. And while he's talking, we get the clearest shot yet of this little thing back here. I am dying to know what it is. I've racked my brain, I've Googled, I've even image searched, and it seems so familiar, but I cannot figure out what this thing is. So if anybody knows, please leave it in the comments. Anyways, Rick agrees to break Tannenbaum out of jail, and Morty agrees to kill him in front of the robo-trees. So they split up for their respective missions, since Morty will need to gather Baron Thistle's army first, and start a conflict for the third act. We then cut to James Gunn in the WB commissary getting lunch. Zack Snyder, played by himself, walks up behind him and orders,
Extra creatine, please.
He then critiques Gunn's new Superman a little and makes a pretty self-aware joke.
Here is a secret move. Start the punch at regular speed and then you're gonna ramp it down.
It's not a fucking secret!
James then tells him about a guy who portaled into his office, and Zack immediately knows it's Rick, revealing that Rick locked Christopher Nolan in a bookcase as punishment for Interstellar. Which, yeah, honestly, I will never understand why Neil deGrasse Tyson fawned over that movie so much. The science in it was laughable.
Love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space.
It's infinitely complex. They have access to infinite time and space, but they're not bound by anything. They can't find a specific place in time. They can't communicate. How? Love, Tars, love.
Not to say it wasn't an okay movie that used some real scientific concepts. Anyways, Zack tries to encourage James not to think about fans like Rick, but James starts obsessing about him instead, and we cut back to Morty walking into Baron Thistle's evil lair. The army is packing up, and the only box in the shot with a label is one that says plates and bowls, which I found hilarious for an evil plant army. When the shot transitions, we also see a box labeled kitchen stuff and another one marked fragile that's upside down, which is kind of funny. Morty then makes a big speech to rally the henchmen, and they immediately fall in line, asking what they should do now. And Morty says to resume the plan to destroy the world by melting the polar ice caps, which inexplicably causes the army to start a dance party, as Jerry watches eating Cracker Jacks. Little does he know that James Gunn is watching him watch the dance party though, and he's in a real vehicle that James owns, a Dodge Challenger SRT Hellcat. He spies on Jerry through a pair of binoculars and realizes Rick built a
movie machine. Says it right on the side.
So he tricks Jerry into walking away from the machine by doing a hilariously bad impression of Beth.
It's me! Your wife!
But when his phone first rings, we get this great shot of his phone laying in a puddle of spilled booze from one of Rick's flasks, and we see Rick change Jerry's background to a picture of him flashing the camera in front of the WB water tower. Anyways, we cut back to Rick approaching Tannenbaum in prison, but he's feeling really down about himself. So Rick says what I think was a reference to Deadpool and Wolverine.
Everyone sucks until they don't. That's the arc of every good story.
Whoever you think I am, you got the wrong guy.
You were always the wrong guy. Till you weren't.
Before suggesting they start a prison riot to facilitate their escape. We cut back to Jerry, completely believing James Gunn is Beth and running into the kitchen for
some lemonade! Can't pass up lemonade.
And James Gunn approaches the machine to steal it before we cut back to Rick and Tannenbaum, who have barricaded themselves in the warden's office right as they set fire to the barricade. And let's just say it, this warden might be an alcoholic. This, his office at work. I mean, good lord, just carry a flask, people. Anyways, Tannenbaum drills them through the wall in order to escape. They head to the Robo-Tree base and everyone celebrates that he's free. And as thanks, Tannenbaum gives Rick
one of your balls.
But they are interrupted when the Hothead Tree shows them a social media post of Morty as the son of Thistle, titled Operation Complete and Total Polar Ice Cap Destruction, #Climate Change, #Evil Plan, #Villain Core. Rick tries to check in with Jerry to make sure they're still on track to end the movie, but he doesn't get a response since it's just James Gunn out there trying to steal the machine. We cut to the trees flying over Morty's evil base and launching their attack. Morty tried to spot Tannenbaum from above so he can snipe him, but Rick signals for Morty to join him and then explains that.
He's kind of my favorite character now.
Which initiated another evil Morty-esque moment for Morty.
Now listen to me, you stupid old man!
And I think it's safe to say that all these moments are leading somewhere. I'd be shocked if this wasn't the focus of an episode soon. Anyways, they realize that both sides had been standing there, listening to them both the whole time, which causes both sides to start attacking them, so they both start running and asking Jerry for help. But James Gunn has chained the machine to his car and explains that Jerry is inside. Luckily, Jerry comes back out, but James tries to butter him up by saying,
I read that dinosaur book you wrote, Jerry.
Obviously a reference to the self-help book Jerry wrote during the Dino episode. He also offers Jerry a multi-movie deal, but Jerry says no and beats the crap out of him before removing the chains and asking Rick what to do. Rick tells him to take some Adderall and write them a new ending. So Jerry writes that they managed to escape to New York and get a Lamborghini, but the robo-trees are still hot on their trail. While they're driving through New York though, for a split second, there's a sign for Krapopolis the Musical, which is hilarious, and a reference to one of Dan Harmon's other shows that I honestly do enjoy myself. Rick tells Jerry to finish the story, so he writes a new tunnel to the North Pole where the Doomsday Weapon the Plant Army built is. The tunnel magically leads from New York to the North Pole, and for presumably cinematic reasons, Rick and Morty get out of the car and run the rest of the way to the device. They climb up to the console and activate the device right as the robo-trees and the plant army catch up with them. The plants attack Morty, and right as the trees are about to attack, Rick Tannenbaum steps in to defend him. But Rick pretends he's pulling a gun, so the trees will shoot him, only to reveal it was the ball Tannenbaum gave him earlier, saying,
"See you next summer."
Obviously referencing the fact that these franchises always come back, but especially so during the summer. Rick then pulls a vat of acid and launches himself and Morty into the classic superhero movie, Skybeam. We cut to their graves while the robo-trees talk about what happened, and number 4 decides to give Tannenbaum his, I guess, leadership hat, his leaf canopy, making Tannenbaum leader of the robo-trees, ending the movie and making James Gunn walk over crying. And one of his tears drops on the keyboard, which somehow brings Rick and Morty out of the machine. But as they are rematerializing, we can just barely make out James grabbing the hard drive and making his escape as Rick and Morty decide to just be
An impossible to please fan.
You said it! Let's go troll some comment section!
Rick realizes he stole the hard drive, and we cut to James on the roof of one of WB's buildings, giving it to someone named Mr. Brothers, which is obviously a joke about Warner Brothers being owned by someone named, like Tom Brothers or something instead of Tom Warner. Mr. Brothers thanks him, but then has him shot by a gun named Sunday. And as he dies, he assumes the pose we see Superman in at the beginning of the new Superman movie. And usually here we skip through the credits. But the song here is good enough that I want to go through some of the lyrics, but I'll let the subtitles of the zoomed in song play, in case anybody wants to read the whole thing. Outside of the obvious bits summarizing what the movie is, my favorite line is, "Gotta fill our content demand. If domestic tanks, there's always Japan." A reference to the fact that Japan's movie-going audience can make or break a movie that fails in the US. After the credits, though, we see that Rick has set Jerry up in the Movielizer to live Space Jam 7, a movie he wrote, but then Summer brings in a script for Raptor porn and places it on the input tray. That's all for this breakdown, though.
Play it cool. You shouldn't need Rick. Rick should need you. You just need to find his pressure points.
Welcome back to Nonsense. I'm Chris.
And this is a breakdown of Rick and Morty, Season 8, Episode 8, No Mortland. We open on a Jerry aggressively eating cereal while the family goes through their morning. Rick calls Space Beth out for faking having plans to avoid him. The kids fight over drinks, and Beth blames Jerry for half a second when she can't find her keys. While Morty chases Summer for a drink, this Jerry watches happily, which I found interesting given his line later in the episode.
Your family's cool, by the way. My Morty and Summer fight way more than yours.
I'm wondering if this was a lie, or if maybe this just reminded him of his kids. I want to assume the latter. But anyways, once they're all out of the house, our Jerry finally comes downstairs to find this Shadow Jerry eating his cereal, crackling nut grapes. The Jerry runs out the door, still eating the cereal, but our Jerry catches him, and they agree to talk somewhere more private, like the mall food court. The two get Chinese food on our Jerry's dime, and Shadow Jerry says,
"The road provides."
And this is an expression I've heard from a hitchhiker before, but I could not find any specific origins for it. The other Jerry admits to being from another dimension, and that he
slipped through cracks in the multiverse.
He also starts calling our Jerry Eagleman as his road name. We later find out that Shadow Jerry's road name is
Mooch. Mooch? It's my road name.
Our Jerry tells him he can't stay in this dimension, so Mooch says he can leave the dimension through the closet back home. And as they're leaving, our Jerry says,
"But just to be clear, if you do try to kill me and take over my life, I can scream very loud."
A direct reference to Dark Matter, which is a live-action, dramatic take on Rick and Morty. The Rick stand-in invents interdimensional travel through a big box and explores the other realities, eventually finding a version of himself who is happier because he focused more on his relationships, and he decides to take over his life. Anyways, they get back at home, and Rick is shoving a frozen alien into the freezer. It's huge, and it takes up the entire freezer, which is why it's hilarious when Rick says,
"There's limited space in there, Jerry. We all live here together."
Jerry distracts Rick while Mooch sneaks upstairs by talking about the new Naked and Alone episode, obviously a reference to the real show Naked and Afraid, saying,
I think that guy likes to drink the yak piss.
Rick initially gets mad Jerry's making small talk, but this sets up the post-credit scene of them watching the show together. There's a second setup for the post-credit scene during the montage, but we'll cover that when we get to it. Jerry meets Mooch upstairs, who explains that a lot of Beths get Rick to build them a pocket dimension closet. He explains a dimension next door has a closet like that and says,
You can't bend reality as often as Rick without the occasional...
And this is the explanation for all the cracks to other dimensions we see in this episode. So Mooch asks if Jerry wants to see some of the multiverse, and Jerry hesitantly says yes after making Mooch promise to get him home afterwards. They enter a new dimension, and Mooch explains an upside-down coaster means the local Jerry is cool with visitors. They all seem to have the same hot dad brewing coaster, which seems about right for Jerry. We see that this is a universe where every word is just blah, and they watch the local Rick try to force his Morty into the ship with a giant ant. Mooch tells him the next entry is in the bathroom and says to sneak over after him, but the local Summer catches our Jerry but doesn't even notice it's not her Jerry. He gets to the bathroom, and we see a picture of their Snowball, who has a cool spot on his eye. They climb through a mirror tunnel to another dimension, and this scene between the infinite tunnel and the frozen wasteland is definitely another reference to dark matter. And this universe's Snowball has a bigger, darker spot on his other eye. The Jerrys put on snowsuits and see the local family frozen in ice. Their Rick nowhere to be found, probably in another dimension, and also probably the cause of the frozen planet. They look at a memorial wall where the visiting Jerrys stick little items to show they've been there. I don't think any of the items are references, but just in case any of you recognize anything, there's a smiley face, which does always make me think Watchmen, but I don't think it's that. A bee here, multiple items with 2 feathers, a cleaver, a wedding ring, a bracelet, and an earring, some kind of dead animal that seems to be staring at them. I think this is a bow tie, and there's a frozen crowbar down here. The rest are just frozen hunks of metal or cloth. Mooch cuts a bit off his shirt for Jerry to stick to the wall, and they continue on the road, as Mooch calls it, launching a montage of universe exploration in classic Rick and Morty fashion. They start in a dimension where everything is made from what I think is yarn, or at least knitting supplies. You can see a bunch of yarn balls and needles everywhere. The textures are all yarny, even the bee is made of yarn, and its wings are just little unmoving loops. I wish we'd gotten to see this universe's people. Jerry accidentally unravels a yarn tree, which was funny. We cut to them in another universe, entering the fridge, and falling out of the roof in the closet of universe, where everyone is a goat. They shrink down, using a shrink ray tied to a coat rack, and ride a rat to watch from a crack as the goat family eats a metal drum, a scene from this season's theme song. They then use an armchair trap to enter the next universe, and we see a reminder of Jerry's Titanic obsession. Next, we see them in hippie Rick's universe partying and having a good time before we cut to them in a flooded universe where Jerry and Rick seem like buddies. Then they have beers on the roof in a universe where Rick turned the moon into a disco ball for Morty's winter formal, sort of a reference to Rick turning everyone into Cronenbergs for Morty's flu awareness dance. The two talk for a bit, and Jerry explains he wasn't even from the dimension Mooch found him in, and the two just bond until they're out of beer. But then Jerry finds a hidden stash of warm bathroom beer, and the party keeps going. But we smash cut to them, running towards their next universe in a hurry, because the way out is by following Propeller Hat Rick and Morty through their portal home after their weekly visit to Taco La Taco. And a detail about Mooch I just noticed is that he wears a watch, obviously to help keep him on track for his multiversal hitchhiking. Having missed their connecting portal, Mooch suggests crashing with the local Gene for a week, but Jerry insists he has to get home or Rick will just replace him, which is honestly super sad if you think about it. So Mooch says the only option is Grand Central, something he doesn't seem excited about, but they head off anyways. Climbing through a broken bag of holding, a D&D reference, into Grand Central Station, where the initials are carved into a tree, a bandana Jerry, radios for a golf cart that takes them to the house. Out front, there's a bunch of tents. One of them has a home doormat, which is kinda sad. Inside we see more bandana Jerrys, and a normal one coming through the cabinet, and angry he's having to pay. They walk past a bunch of abandoned Jerrys in the living room. One has a black eye. This guy is working on a map of the universal cracks, it seems like. They walk into the boss Jerry's office as he's applying his Nevia hair dye. And the Rick is heating up what seems like crystallized portal fluid on a spoon, like it's heroin. Reminds us of this Rick from the Citadel episode. Boss Jerry wants higher pay for letting them through, and Mooch agrees. Jerry asks where he got the money, and Boss Jerry reveals Mooch steals from other Jerrys since they all have the same ATM pin. 3852, which is part of Rick's prisoner number when he's held by the Federation. Not sure if that's intentional or not. If anybody else knows why it's 3852, please leave it in the comments. Boss Jerry takes all of Mooch's stuff and Jerry threatens him saying his Rick would kick his ass. But Boss Jerry isn't fazed, and instead forces the drug-addicted Rick to send them back to Mooch's home dimension and bans them from Grand Central. When they arrive in Mooch's home dimension through Morty's school sports supplies shed, they've both been blindfolded, and our Jerry seemingly saves the blindfolds as a disguise for later when they sneak back in. Mooch doesn't want to go back to his family, revealing that he just left one day, and when he came back, Beth had remarried. Jerry doesn't care though, because he wants to get home, and his best bet is heading to Mooch's house. He knocks, and Beth's new husband answers. A callback to Season 2, Episode 2.
Paul Fleischman, Infinite Timelines, and some of them Beth remarries.
Jeez.
Don't worry, I treat Beth very well, and I do not overstep my bounds with Morty. Every kid needs a dad, but there's no replacing you.
Only that version didn't have the 5 o'clock shadow that this one has. The first actual hint we get at the joke that definitely got the biggest laugh out of me. Because when the family comes to see him, they all have the shadows too. And if this isn't the moment that got the biggest laugh out of you, I'd be curious which joke got you more than this one. Anyways, everybody sits down at the table, and Mooch explains that he left because he didn't feel appreciated, and everybody hated him. The family is just angry that he left, and all the while Jerry is just hilariously chowing down, I guess as revenge for Mooch having eaten his cereal. Their snowball looks just like ours did, which is cool. After Mooch apologizes to the family, he finally asks his Rick if he can teleport Jerry home. But Jerry doesn't know his universal address, so they agree to just go back through the shed if Rick will unlock the portal for them. So Rick does it, and they disguise themselves with the bandanas from earlier. Then they sneak back into Grand Central Station through a washing machine. We see the board with the band Jerry's, and there's one with a cool hair curl, one with a hat and sunglasses, one in, I think, a fedora, a fish Jerry. The rest are all normal looking. The guard Jerry is reading the book Fight Club, which is funny. But he basically immediately sees through their disguises, and so they push him down and sprint for a dimensional crack in the couch. They emerge in a cubism universe, which is the art style they are mimicking with the faces, but Boss Jerry is already waiting for them there. So they climb back through the couch, and we get another montage of them jumping between universes. First through Summer's closet into an old-fashioned universe where Beth is making cookies, dressed as a traditional wife and even a little more makeup on than usual. But there's a horse on her apron to show she still had her dreams and goals, even if she couldn't pursue them in this universe. They run past a Jerry who is naked and watching the Naked and Alone show. We also see another Titanic sign and an electric guitar, which I would not expect from Jerry. Anyways, they run back through that flooded dimension. Then through a portal by a pizza place that a Rick with a cool designed lab coat is visiting. And the bandana Jerrys immediately start acting innocent as the Rick catches on to what they're doing, which was funny. Then they run through the hippie universe, and finally they take the rat from the goat universe and make it big using the shrink ray from earlier, which must also work as a growth ray, obviously, and use that to break past the security at Grand Central. They leap back into the bag of holding, and Boss Jerry crawls in after them, screaming about how weak and pathetic they are, and eventually just trying to shoot them. Luckily, they make it out and manage to cut the line, presumably killing him. From here, they finally make it back to Jerry's home dimension. And here's where we have to pause, because I hate to be this guy, but this made absolutely zero sense. It doesn't matter, it's a great episode, and this ruins nothing. But just to point it out, this was the dimension they were in when they took the bag of holding to Grand Central. The one where they missed the portal out at Taco La Taco and had to wait a week, and there was no other way out. That's literally why they went to Grand Central. So how did they get home from here? Also, they visited the Yarn, hippie, and flooded universes before Grand Central or even the Taco La Taco universe, so shouldn't they have been able to get home from those? Again, it doesn't matter. But just logically, this does not add up. But again, literally, who cares? Anyways, the two say goodbye, and Mooch hints that he's going to take over for Boss Jerry, but he's less mean about it, obviously. Mooch leaves right as Beth finds Jerry and calls the family in, since it turns out everybody was freaked out and looking for him, which is really sweet, especially since he was worried the whole episode that nobody would notice, or care, if he was gone. And then Summer sets Morty up for my favorite line of the episode.
You missed Morty mating with an octopus.
It'll probably happen again.
The family leaves, including Rick, which is why this part is kind of weird. Rick leans back in after Jerry flips his coaster to let other Jerrys know they were welcome here. But look how much time passes from Rick leaving to walking back in. He must have just been standing right by the door. Maybe he suspected it already. But either way, it's kind of weird but funny to think about. Anyways, Rick figures out what it means immediately, but tells Jerry it might be good for him, which immediately causes Jerry to flip it back over as the final joke of the episode. We skip through the credits and see Naked and Alone playing, the guy talking about trapping a yak so he can drink its piss. Paying off the setup from earlier when Jerry said the guy just liked drinking piss, and then we cut to Rick and Jerry watching it in the nude. Paying off the scene of that other Jerry watching it nude. Overall, it was a really fun episode. I always enjoy a good Jerry episode. I mean, Chris Parnell is just so talented. But that's all for this breakdown.
There she is. Hello, Mother. I wish I could have known you.
She was finest I ever had. Well, top 3. Top 5, at least.
Welcome back to Nonsense. I'm Chris, and this is a breakdown of Rick and Morty, Season 8, Episode 9, Morty Daddy. We open on the family eating pancakes, and Jerry says,
"It feels like we eat them all the time."
Which, yes, the Smiths do eat pancakes pretty often. 2 instances come to mind immediately,
Morty's on Jessica's Instagram again.
Oh, I get it.
though I'm guessing there are plenty more. I would say, though, more often than not, they just eat breakfast food. But in this moment, Beth and Rick look at each other weird, and Morty and Summer look at them weird too, so maybe it is something. Beth did make him a giant stack of pancakes for his anniversary living with him in Season 1, Episode 10, so maybe it has a special meaning to Rick somehow? Anyways, Morty's phone vibrates as he gets a call from Morty Jr. from Raising Gazorpazorp, who is in the hospital now. Morty agrees to go see him and tells the family, who react negatively. Jerry pulls out the book Junior wrote trashing Morty and complains it made him and Beth look like bad parents. Then a table buzzer in Rick's coat starts vibrating, setting up the Rick and Summer storyline of going to a hipster-sounding restaurant. But before they leave, a third vibrating object is heard, and calmly Jerry explains it's just his butt plug.
Do you want me to pull it out and show it to you?
They all walk out, and we cut to Junior's hospital room TV playing Downbeat the Show, a continuation of the Downbeat gag that makes jokes out of the phrase downbeat.
Downbeat!
How do you win this fucking game?
We've never gotten that far.
Downbeat.
I enjoy this game.
We'll play Downbeat, and we'll camp here tonight, and then rebuild the house.
We're not gonna finish playing Downbeat?
What, that dice game where you shake dice and yell out downbeat?
Which, among people who work in TV, means the activity that characters are doing at the beginning of a scene before the actual scene begins. Anyways, Morty walks into Junior's hospital room and comments on how quickly his species ages. Junior apologizes for writing the book, but the animators did a good job of making it seem like he's hamming it up a lot. Especially since it turns out he wasn't dying or anything. And we don't see him cough again through the end of the episode. But Junior finally tells Morty why he called.
I was hoping you'd help me make peace with my mother.
And Morty awkwardly explains that his mom was a sex robot. But Junior already knew that, so Morty agrees to help. We cut to Precogs, the fancy restaurant Summer had been wanting to visit. And there's a giant fish tank in the middle where we immediately see one of the Precogs swimming around. So they must be amphibious as well as having precognition. Summer's excited, but Rick is skeptical as their table gets called. As they walk through the place, there's an alien eating the brains out of a bug head, while their date eats what looks like spaghetti intestines out of a little green critter, kind of reminding us of the spaghetti intestines from that episode. And then, here, there's presumably a couple sharing some kind of ice cream-looking dessert, as the gimmick of the place is revealed. The Precogs order for you, and guarantee you'll love the meal. As Summer and Rick get to their table, we also see a fly eating a BDSM rotisserie chicken, complete with a ball gag, leather straps, and a spiked collar, while their lady frog date eats another alien of some sort. The waiter comes out with their meals, and Rick gets
More Lackey and Fawn.
Beside its mother's tentacle.
Which he seems pleasantly surprised by as he dodged the tentacle to eat the fawn first. But he does finish the tentacle too, which is not as alien as you might think. There's a Korean dish called Sonic-ji that involves eating still writhing and squirming octopus tentacles. On the edge of this screen though, we also see the classiest looking alien snail ever eating some kind of goop. But when Summer's meal is revealed to be avocado toast, she winds up getting kinda mad about it. We cut back to Morty and Junior, who are accessing Rick's garbage disposal portal in the garage. So it's probably safe to assume Garbage Goober is out of a job. But more importantly, this portal is light blue instead of green. We saw plenty of these in the Rick Prime finale episode, but Rick using one is unheard of, and I honestly don't know why this is. Maybe light blue is better for portals that stay open, or maybe light blue means it leads to like a pocket dimension or something. I'm open to any theories you have in the comments. Morty explains Rick threw her away into the portal, so Junior pulls out his speech and reads the first half. The whole thing though reads, "Mother, I'm told your mouth was always open, but I'm sure your heart was as well. As I stand before the place where you were laid to rest on something, for the last time something, to honor the something of your life, something effect you had." It reads like someone who really wants to write deeply, but is utterly failing to do so, which is his whole vibe this episode, so that makes sense. He puts away the note, and they decide to head down into the portal together. We cut to them inside, and we see an old banana peel on the console on the other side. A classic TV trope for showing that a place is a mess. Morty locks a console, and the ladder retracts, as I think mechanical doors close over the portal. They start walking, and there are plenty of Easter eggs in the trash piles we'll see, but this first shot doesn't seem to contain anything special. As the shot expands though, we do see a cool Iron Giant looking guy. At the end of the shot, we see the obvious reference to the Eye of Sauron in Rick's Salvatron system.
A self-replicating system that filters the trash for anything valuable.
One of the drones flies up and scans them.
Oh, they're coming over. Just a formality.
Before declaring them valuable. But after realizing what Rick did to the last Salvatron drone, who found something valuable, he decides to just kill them instead. So they start running, and we cut back to Summer and Rick, and see the frog and fly couple getting their desserts. The frog gets a cute little pirate ship on something green with tentacles coming out, and the fly gets a little critter tied up by its limbs. The fancy snail, though, is still working on the same size pile of goop. Probably a joke about snails being slow. Rick loves his meal, though, and says he hopes he gets lava cake for dessert. Summer finally tries her avocado toast and absolutely hates it, so she decides to go and complain. She barges into the back kitchen, and we see what I think is the lava cake Rick wanted on the shelf here. We see 3 more precogs, and there's a lot of human ingredients in this kitchen. Carrots, potatoes, whatever you call these things. No Easter eggs, but it is cool that they're half submerged in water even while cooking. They start finishing her sentences as she complains, and Rick follows her in, trying to talk her out of getting involved. But instead, Summer chucks a pan at them. The cops have already been called, and are outside though, indicating this was all part of the precog's plan. He tries to get Summer out of there, but one of the cogs says,
Rick Sanchez will realize the cogs are a better hang.
And they offer him dessert and a cool safe house with a pool to lay low if he takes them with him, which immediately works on him. We cut back to Morty and Junior running from Salvatron through the same pile they walked through at the beginning for some reason. Probably to save on animation. The ground falls in though, and the two fall through a hole. And while they fall, we see a Meeseeks box here, and from the hole perspective, we see a second Meeseeks box down here. And I wonder what would happen if the button got pressed while falling and nobody was there to give the Meeseeks a purpose. Anyways, the Salvatron assumes they're dead, and when we cut back to the trash pile, we can see the spaghetti plate from the spaghetti episode. As they climb out of the pile though, they're approached by a sentient pizza box who tells them it's not safe in this area. So they follow him to Garbtopia, an underground city made of Rick's trash. There's a photo booth and a movie stand, and a robot carrying a bone. And since we see they use bones in construction here, he's probably using it to build something. There's a stereo robot and a mustache TV robot, who vaguely reminds me of Miss Minutes, a walking version of the reclining chair, and this alien back here is wearing a Boob World hat. They walk past some horny sentient bathroom bots, and Morty shows the pizza in a picture and asks if he's seen her. The pizza bot tells them she's in the graveyard, and leaves a pizza with an arrow pointing the way on the ground, to which Morty responds,
Wish you hadn't shit it on the ground, I'm kinda hungry.
He then realizes he's lost Junior, but finds him nearby watching a play. It turns out the play is based on a fiction book he wrote that Rick must have bought and then thrown away, called The Enchanted Goblin. While he's watching up in the corner, we can also see a lucky cat statue, which I'm surprised Rick would buy at all. And over here we can see a fishbowl robot ordering at what looks like a good stand called Leftovers. Morty expresses he's glad they came together and says my favorite line of the episode.
Now what do you say we go see your dead mom?
We cut back to Rick chilling in a guitar-shaped pool next to a giant eclair as Summer complains they came with the precogs and are still here. They offer her some eclair and she smacks it into the pool. But since another one scoops it up and gives gives it to Rick, who says
Claire's good wet, too.
it's safe to assume it was part of their plan. We cut back to Morty and Junior in the graveyard, and there's a lot of dead robot graves, and one desktop computer grave, which I thought was funny. We also see an Alice mailbox robot and watering can robot. They walk in, and Junior says,
Looks like there's a sex robot section over that way.
And they walk past some really bizarre looking lady robots before getting to the right one. Morty tries to comfort Junior by telling him his mom was great in bed, but accidentally just winds up bragging about how many women he's slept with and ranking them. Junior reveals he hooked up with Heather Locklear in response, who's an actress best known for Melrose Place. They then get attacked by a giant trash robot who doesn't get a real name. He demands that Morty let him out of the trash portal, and out of fear, Junior reveals he was never dying and just needed new material for his new book. The trash bot then shoots Junior and leaves him for dead, and we cut to him and Morty back by the entrance as he forces Morty to open it. But the system detects Morty's probably leading a trash rebellion and declines to open it. The Salvatrons close in though and shoot the trash bot first before firing at Morty, who manages to fall through another hole.
Then, as fate would have it, a very large air vent opened beneath them. Our heroes escape execution via the large vented air vent. As fate would have it, this is a direct path to the outside.
This time the Salvatron follows him in though, and we see the butter robot here.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
And this robot head stands out enough that I do think it's a reference, I just can't figure out to what. Morty hides, and right before the Salvatrons find him, Junior and the actors from the play show up to save him. We also see a can of Mortio's spaghetti down here again from the spaghetti episode. The actors say they need to go warn Garbtopia that the Salvatrons know about the tunnels now though, and we cut back to Rick waking up thinking the Cogs had drugged him. But it was actually Summer who drugged everyone and kidnapped the Cogs to get them away from Rick. She gets him to admit she hadn't wanted avocado toast and had only used them to get to Rick. So she offers to help them complete whatever their goal is if they leave them alone, and they agree. Rick catches up to them, and the Cogs start giving Summer detailed instructions on how to avoid Rick, that ultimately wind up turning the truck into a cool-looking food truck. First, through a freshly painted sign in Spanish for a car accident injury attorney. Then, Rick tears the hole along the side using a towing hook. Then they crash through a restaurant depot to get the cooking supplies, and at times they literally blind Summer in order to get her to make the right mistake so they survive, which is pretty cool. Rick jumps ahead, but they just ram into him and off the freeway before we cut back to Morty Jr. trying to warn everyone that the Salvatrons know about the city. So they decide to attack his tower right before the Salvatrons show up. And there's this moment where one of the urinals says,
Pow! Right the pisser.
an obvious reference to Ralph from the Honeymooners.
One of these days, right in the kisser!
Anyways, Morty and the gang dig out of the underground city and attack the Salvatron Tower. Together, they manage to clear the Salvatrons out and decide to start a new civilization out of Rick's sentient trash, with Morty Jr. as its leader. We cut back to some kind of indie market as Summer manages to avoid everyone, including a couple taking romantic pictures, some kids, and this hilarious cat. She then crashes the newly created food truck perfectly into a parking spot among other food trucks. And the Cogs immediately get out and start making their gourmet hot dogs, revealing that all along, Summer's perfect meal was one of them. Rick then basically begs them to keep hanging out with him, but they refuse, setting up the end credits scene when he literally throws them away. Although they obviously would have been aware that would happen too. We cut back to the Mortys and see a used gun shop in their newly established civilization, as well as a dollar bin garbage shop. Morty Jr. seems happy and signals he doesn't want to leave, but Morty is disappointed the portal home hasn't reopened yet. Jr. then explains he's married and been fucking a sentient microwave before the Cogs food truck falls through the portal, and Morty sprints towards it. Jr. then starts monologuing while the shot shifts to a drawing of the scene in his next book, and despite it being black and white, the cyborg's eye is still red for some reason. The shot then widens to reveal the family is looking at the book at a stand in an airport. Rick is actually there too, and wearing what I think are ski goggles indicating they're going skiing. But I honestly have to ask why Rick would ever need to take a plane anywhere. It honestly makes zero sense, and is the most confusing part of this entire episode to me. Anyways, we skip through the credits, and the cutscene is just the Cogs now in Rick's trash dimension for some reason, serving biological food to robots. Another confusing bit for me personally, but that's all for this breakdown.
Oh, hey, Bagan.
Hey, Rick. The Defiance owes you to a debt of gratitude. Rick, pretty cool to see you working with your daughter. Pretty hot.
Oh, okay.
Please don't fuck my coworkers.
Hey, you called me. Yeah. This has been fun.
Welcome back to Nonsense. I'm Chris, and this is a breakdown of the Season 8 finale of Rick and Morty, Hot Rick. We open on Rick and Bug Ann, out of breath from interspecies coitus. Already a joke, since in episode 2 of this season, Beth literally said,
Please don't fuck my coworkers.
And Bug Ann's name is also kind of a reference to Bird Person's name, which is itself a joke since his whole species are birds. And her name is Bug Ann, but her whole family and planet are bugs, which since most bugs lay eggs, it also makes me wonder what she's working with down there that's got Rick so interested. Anyways, she invites Rick to a barbecue with her parents and says she knows he's not over Diane or ready for anything serious. He says he doesn't remember much of Diane though, since
The, thing evil me used to erase Diane everywhere, it f***s with your mind. Beth only thinks she remembers her mom.
Which isn't a reveal per se, but is important context for us to understand how Rick remembers his whole life. Like imagine remembering your life with someone existing, but when you try to remember them, you just can't. That's heartbreaking. He feels emotionally exposed though, so he cuts off the conversation, and right as they start on round 2, we cut to the family, watching Cake or Fake, Celebrity Edition. Another entry in the Cake or Fake show, which has been funny.
Please, come on! You have to know! Do I not breathe? Do I not speak?
Give me the knife.
No! Oh my god, please! I'm not a cake!
But this time, the guest is Mr. Stabby, who is also a returning feature.
Let's get another question from the audience.
What do you say to people who say, I don't want to get stabbed, I want to go to a show?
Well, Gary, I have a right to arms and legs.
But do you have to take questions from the audience?
They didn't want it, they'd stop coming.
Your show has resulted in the deaths of 58,000 attendees.
You're talking about it.
And you'll never guess how this episode ends.
It was a real baby, not a cake, and Mr. Stabby's canceled now.
Rick walks in and Space Beth ribs on him for dating Bug Ann, but Beth says,
Dad's too hung up on Mom to ever commit.
Meanwhile, Jerry's presumably watching Mr. Stabby murder that baby, but then he complains about Space Beth ribbing on Rick since he's like the nicest guy in the universe, which obviously confuses everyone, but Jerry lists off a bunch of clearly false memories about him, so Rick runs some tests and confirms that it's Memory Rick, who you remember from Season 5 Episode 8 is a sentient memory of Rick from Bird Person's mind, who Rick left trapped in a reality where everything is made of gears and springs. We see him in Jerry's memory of Beth's baby shower with a sign that just says, "Oh baby," Jerry's parents sitting back here. No theme song this time. We just cut to the title card and then continue in the memory of Beth giving birth to Morty, I assume, and Memory Rick being very supportive. Rick reiterates he's just a sentient memory that
Must have been inadvertently dumped into Jerry when we shuffled our brains last season.
obviously referencing this episode from Season 7. We then see Memory Rick driving the family home after the birth. He's driving a car made of gears and springs, which is funny, but I think he would never want to make something like that again after he escaped. Anyways, he gets sucked out of Jerry's brain and into a digital world, and Rick resets Jerry's memories back to normal, which makes Beth comment,
Amazing that you can just suck out an intrusive memory like that.
and Space Beth also makes a similar comment at the end.
Pretty impressive reset job.
Which I think is part of a larger theme the show is trying to establish about Rick. He's always been obsessed with memory, which makes sense after what happened with Diane. He was always trying to find ways to regain his memories of her after Rick Prime wiped her from reality, and he seems to have regained a little slice, like he calls it. Anyways, Rick traps Memory Rick in what he calls an ant farm brain, but to me personally, it looks more like a desktop computer brain. Then the family walks out, and Memory Rick immediately gets to work on his escape plan, while Rick throws a few back. Beth worries he's lonely, but Space Beth reassured her.
He f***s things we can't even comprehend.
Which is obviously Space Beth using terribly unhealthy logic. And Beth is just worried Rick lacks companionship. A sentiment Rick is clearly thinking about as he chugs a beer and suddenly decides to start working on something. He drops a bit of brain matter into this solution, but behind it we see some memory vials. And since we later see this takes place in the vault, it makes me wonder what memories are so bad they have to be secured like this. The brain matter expands and he tosses it into a laundry basket to carry. He then builds a case for it, doing something we very rarely see Rick do. use a blueprint. He installs the brain matter, then solders a connector onto the case, and finally plugs it into his mind-reading machine, and writes himself a note that reads,
Dear Rick, you took the memory of Diane out of your head. You did this to be more emotionally open. Don't at me.
He then puts on the headset and starts the machine, entering his own mind. He travels through some sort of digital memory palace and visits his only remaining memory of Diane while she's at a shooting range, where she seems to be really good. The context here is interesting though, because he does not seem to be part of the memory, so how could it be one of his memories? Obviously based on the second gun, and the way she looks at it for a moment here, she's missing him, but how could he remember it? Was he watching? I'm very curious, but I have no idea. He hesitates to do it, but initiates the removal of the memory, and leaves as it gets sucked out of his brain. Once awake, he reads the note and walks out, immediately calling Bug Ann to agree to go to her family barbecue. We cut to the next morning, and Beth is yawning walking into the garage to check on Memory Rick. But as soon as she activates the monitor, it sets off an alarm on the giant machine Memory Rick has built within the brain computer. So he starts his machine, and it causes some sort of electrical signal that imprints his consciousness into Beth's brain, not taking it over, but just moving into her memories. And she rejoins the family for breakfast. Bug Ann rings the doorbell to pick Rick up for the barbecue, and he introduces her to everyone before grabbing a coffee to go and eating one of Jerry's pancakes. And now that Jerry pointed it out, I have to play this clip every time they have pancakes.
Is someone requesting pancakes? Because it feels like we eat them all the time.
Rick eats Jerry's pancake while explaining he took the memory of Diane out of his head, and everybody freaks out about it. We then see Memory Rick in Beth's memory of this very scene, hearing that Rick took Diane out of his head and deciding to break her out of her brain computer. He sneaks up into older memories through a vent that wasn't there a moment earlier, crawling through the vent to Beth's memory of her Rick walking out on her. And he does look basically exactly like Rick Prime, and has one of the older generation portal guns. Once he leaves, Memory Rick crashes through the ceiling and gets Beth excited, saying he's staying with her. And then he gets my favorite bit from the episode.
We're gonna have so much fun together, sweetie. Yay! Then we'll save your mother from a secret underground memory prison.
We then cut to Bug Ann's home planet, where we see they're setting up for some kind of festival, and it's being set up around what looks kind of like termite or other bugs' pointy mounds. There are crowds cheering, and this is nothing like a family barbecue I've ever been to. But maybe family barbecues are different when you're a bug, and Rick seems to be having a good time with everyone. There's a piano player back here and a bug being roasted here. Bug Ann points out her ex-boyfriend who's bending a bug part from a bowl full of delicious insect body parts. Bug Ann's parents walk over and she introduces them to Rick. He seems nervous, but they welcome him warmly, and her dad comments that Rick has known his daughter for a very long time. To which Rick makes the mistake of responding.
I have, though Bug Ann and I have only been hooking up for a few months.
What?
And it turns out her culture doesn't allow premarital sex, and now Rick has to duel her ex-boyfriend in a giant arena, which makes this line from Bug Ann's mom earlier especially funny.
Bromphamites give us bugs a bad name. Such a violent culture.
But the duel doesn't have to be to the death, at least. The rules are just that they have to duel till either one dies or just gives up. But if you give up,
you admit you are incapable of love and commitment.
Bug Ann complains Rick didn't get to know her culture at all before coming, and he complains about the ritualistic violence, but she asks him not to kill her ex. Also, the platform they're on is shaped like a giant bug head, which is pretty badass. Her ex yells, "Fight me, slut!" before attacking, and we cut to Memory Rick going through Beth's memories and adding in training and brainwashing to get her to break into Rick's safe and free Memory Diane from her computer brain. He's in her memory of detention specifically, proctored by Beth's cool dad, explaining the layout of the sub-basement while she practices safe cracking. He also says Summer must have a key card to get in since she does chores for Rick, setting that up for later. We then see Beth's memory of Diane picking her up, and we see that Rick was right. There's a fuzzy green blob where Diane is supposed to be. Before she heads out, though, Memory Rick makes her repeat her brainwashing phrase.
Mom is trapped in a box in the sub-basement. I'm the only one who can save her. This is how we stay a family.
In the next memory, she practices pickpocketing so she can get the keycard off Summer. He then trains her on how to fight, all while making her constantly repeat the brainwashing phrase. Meanwhile, Beth is actually slicing up some celery and talking to Space Beth when Summer walks in from doing chores for Rick, saying,
Piranha plants are in heat again.
And that moment is obviously where Beth pickpocketed Summer for the key, even though it's not explicitly stated. Beth puts the sliced up celery in a bowl while asking Summer about parts of the sub-basement where Rick keeps important stuff. And Summer tells her the safe is on level 7 before suggesting they watch a movie, which both Beths agree to, and Beth just leaves the sliced up celery there. We then cut to her doing a back widow landing into level 7 of the sub-basement, and using Summer's keycard to get into the safe. She puts the mind helmet on, and Memory Rick enters the mind computer to see Diane. They run at each other and make out a bit before he invites her out, and she immediately agrees. They re-enter Beth's mind, and as she gets up, we finally get a full shot of this crazy-looking coffin with red gems on it, a padlock and a chain held together by a strange glowing green thing. And I am dying to know what this thing is. I've racked my brain and Googled, image searched, even read through the Reddit discussion thread for the episode in case somebody else figured it out, but I found nothing, so I am open to theories in the comments. Anyways, Space Beth walks in and confronts her for acting weird, but Beth just references some of her fake memories. Space Beth realizes it must have something to do with Memory Rick, and Beth tricks her into walking out first before trying to knock her out with the brain computer. But Beth has a metal skeleton now, so it doesn't hurt her, and the two start fighting until Beth snaps her neck and runs away. We cut back to Memory Rick and Memory Diane in one of Beth's memories after he's explained everything, including that she is a conscious memory. And I love that Bud chair still had a gear and a spring in it. Rick says they should already be back in the brain computer Rick trapped him in, revealing that was his only other goal. He just didn't want to be stuck in there all alone. He runs out to check on Beth, and Diane walks around, running into radicalized Beth training with knives. That sneaks up on her and threatens her, and Diane reveals that they're both just memories, causing this memory to turn into a memory Beth with her own will and consciousness. She then runs away and into Rick, and they run back to the pod together. Rick gets angry she revealed to Beth that she was a memory, and says they've already put a lot of strain on Beth's brain when he brainwashed her into rescuing Diane, which makes her pretty upset, and Memory Rick says,
Aw, our first fight.
And we cut back to the arena, and Rick is obviously just cleaning house. He decides to just leave though, so he portals back into the safe to put the memory of Diane back since he realized it was a mistake. But instead he finds Space Beth and manages to fix her neck. He then realizes this must be Memory Rick's doing, and checks on him, only to find him gone. We cut back to Beth driving alone some kind of canyon road and clearly losing her mind, as she keeps repeating her brainwashing phrase. Meanwhile, Memory Rick and Diane are making their way to Beth's recent memories, so we see the family out front during the Matrix episode, while Morty is working on his tank, then the Easter episode where Jerry's becoming more bunny-like, then the de-aged Beth's episode, who make an appearance later on. We then see that Memory Beth is now waking up and creating other Memory Beths, all with the goal of killing Memory Rick. We cut back to Beth while Rick and Space Beth have caught up to her. She chucks a soda at them with impressive accuracy. And we cut back to Memory Rick sneaking past Rick in Beth's memory of earlier this episode. They wind up getting jumped by all the Memory Beths though, even the de-aged Beths. They manage to escape though and get into the car with Beth in the memory of her running away after snapping Space Beth's neck, and manage to escape just in time. But Memory Rick reveals he doesn't even have a plan, and that if Rick catches them they'll probably die. Beth is losing her mind at this point, so she decides to just run the car off the cliff while screaming her brainwashing phrase. Obviously Rick saves her though, and Space Beth jumps down to help, but Beth just attacks her and they fight until the car gets to the ground and Beth's head starts aching and she collapses. Space Beth tries to help her, but she just goes for her pistol and puts it to her own head, saying she just wants the voices to stop. In her mind, Memory Rick gets caught by the Memory Beths, and they're about to kill him when they get interrupted by seeing the live memory of Rick approaching Beth and the two sharing this really heartfelt moment.
I wasn't there for you, and someone took advantage of that, but I'm here now. Your real dad is here, Beth, and he's more emotionally open.
And him being vulnerable like this allows her to feel safe enough to embrace him, and even though he knocks her out for her own safety, it doesn't change the truth behind what he said. Rick has grown, and it shows in his relationship with the Beths. He's not the hardened, isolated figure who doesn't care about anybody that we met in Season 1. I'm not sure any animated comedy has ever had such a strong character arc before. Anyways, Rick incapacitated her, and we cut to her in the brain helmet thing and tied up on a chair. She's sad she can't remember her mom, and Rick regrets she can't remember Diane, but reminds her that nobody remembers her thanks to Rick Prime, saying,
Even I only had a scrap of her.
And I'm curious how he managed to get that scrap, honestly. But he wipes Beth of her memories of Memory Rick, and the two join everyone for dinner. Morty asks,
What happened to Memory Rick?
To which Rick just says,
He's gone.
Which everybody's sad about, saying he was really nice. Rick gets mad and storms off, saying he's going to see Bug Ann. But in reality, he's taking Memory Rick and Memory Diane out into deep space to live eternally in a brain-computer digital reality flying through space, under the condition that they never bother him again. In a way, giving Rick and Diane a happy ending that he'll never get to experience. A reality that is incredibly difficult to process, so Rick understandably says,
So I'm gonna mind blow myself and forget this ever happened. You're on your own.
Before they all say goodbye and Rick blasts them off into eternity. Rick checks his messages and sees that Bug Ann saw but didn't reply to his message, but at least he's finally let go of Diane, and maybe now he can accept a real happy ending for himself with the life he's built. We skip through the credits and see Mr. Poopy Pants himself doing one of his classic post-season cutscenes, but from the inside of a padded room. The scientists wonder who he's talking to, and his wife insists she has proof he's not from this dimension, but replaced her real husband. They ask her what she wants to do with him, and we cut on a devious cliffhanger. That's all for this breakdown, though. I've still got plenty of episodes to break down from this season, and I'm almost done with last week's episode. Once I'm done with all of them, I'm going to be doing a complete Season 8 breakdown, updated with the details I've gotten in the comments from everyone. So if you notice anything I missed, please leave it in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.
Has it occurred to you that I asked you to make those things because I wanted you to spend time with me? I'm one of infinite Beths with infinite fathers and infinite universes. It's called a hug, Dad. It won't kill you.
Yeah, don't be so sure.